Here.
Jessica Johnson.
Here.
Beth Praska.
Here.
Eric Gordy is absent. And then Amy Edwards is here, and we have a quorum. I'd like to ask for a motion to consider approval of the agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
The first and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Agenda approved. First official agenda item is recognition presented by Superintendent Durand.
We have 4 recognitions tonight. First of all, at the Rockford area elementary school, we have a review and reflection, and I'd like to recognize 2nd grade student Mackenzie Lockwood for her expertise in sharing her perspectives on what makes Reams a unique place to learn during the Northwest Suburban Review and Reflection Evaluation Student Interview. So thanks very much, Mackenzie. Rockford Middle School Center for Environmental Studies Battle of the Books. I'd like to recognize the winners of the 7th and 8th grade Battle of the Books that was held on Friday, February 22nd. Claire Check and Elizabeth Sylvester. They put in hard work and demonstrated their knowledge of the material to come out on top. Congratulations. 2 of our high school auditorium technicians. We've got student support that helps in the auditorium, and we'd like to thank Taylor Andrus and Sean Hoekstra for supporting the many events that we host in the high school auditorium. Both of these students go well above and beyond to make sure that the lights, the sound, the microphones, the projectors are all there ready for the needs of our community. They're cordial and they take the responsibility very seriously. They keep the control booth organized and maintain the equipment inventory. Thanks to Taylor and Sean for everything you do for the Rockford community. And then finally, activities, career points. We'd like to recognize Nick Manthana for scoring his 1,000th career point late in February 21st Annandale game. This is an impressive accomplishment, with Nick averaging almost 19 points per game. Congratulations to all of our students for their recognitions tonight.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Next agenda item is public comments. At public comment, members of the public may participate in board meetings during comment by filling out a public appearance registration form. At this point in time, I will read the statement. Public comment at each regular school board meeting is an opportunity for residents of the area school district to address the school board. After being recognized by the chair, each individual will identify themselves and the group they represent, if any. To ensure that all individuals have a chance to speak, speakers will be limited to 1 3-minute presentation. The public comment portion of the regular school board meeting is not a time to debate an issue, but for the school board to hear comments from community members. The Minnesota Government Data Practices Act prohibits comment about specific student matters, even without naming the student in open session. This includes the public comment portion of a school board meeting. The board respects and values input on student matters, but when it relates to a specific student or a specific student matter, such input must be heard by the appropriate personnel, such as the building principal or superintendent, and not during an open meeting of the school board. Kathy, do we have anyone that has submitted?
Not yet.
All right. Well then, at this time, we'll close the public comment portion of the school board meeting. Next agenda item is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. I have a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Consent agenda carries. Next agenda item is under our fiscal responsibility category, and it is the audit proposal. Chair and Paul.
Good evening. So I have a few action items here tonight. A is Clifton Larson Allen is our auditor, and every year they have a proposal as far as what they'll cover for the audit each year. It's the same as last year, everything in here, including the price that they're estimating it to be. They've served us well over the years. They've walked us through issues. They're very supportive, so I recommend approval.
Thank you. This was in our board packet. Does anyone have any questions regarding the audit proposal? All right, without any questions, I will take a motion
I'll make that motion.
to accept the audit
To
proposal.
accept it. Yep.
Okay.
I'll second that.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
The fun will
Next.
begin shortly.
Great. Next agenda item, share.
Under B, it's the 1920 purchasing approval. So every year, we come to you in March or April and ask for approval to buy certain things, instructional items that are at discounted rates. Typically, the statute says that we cannot purchase items until the budget has been approved, and that will not be brought to you guys until May or June for next year. And so this just puts it into place that we can purchase them. The purchasing order will include a July 1 bill date, and the materials will not be used until next year.
And I did receive a couple of questions on that from board members, and one of the questions was, is there a percentage that you can spend up to a maximum percentage? We don't have that rule in this district. I have had that in other districts. This is really a bridge from now till the time that you pass that 2019, 2020 budget. So it's more of a bridge vote than it is something that I think will be in place for a long time.
Any questions? Any comments? This is something, as Chair said, that we do every year that allows the district to buy in at the best rate possible for anticipated, expenditures in the next year. So if there are no further comments or questions, I would take a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the purchasing approval for 1920.
Take a second.
I'll second it.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, no further discussion. We'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
And we'll go on to item C, which is the 2019-20 fee schedule. Again, this is brought every year. On page 1, the activities department, there are no increases. We increased last year. And on page 2, the increases that there are highlighted in yellow.
Or toothpaste.
AP testing actually went down $1. And the only other increases are lunch fees, and those are going up by 10 cents as the recommended amount. Federal government has a calculator out there. It's called the USDA Paid Lunch Equity Calculator. So we have to put all of our information in there, and the inflation rate is by the Consumer Price Index. And it gives you a targeted weighted average price that we're supposed to charge. It gives you a couple-year window. If you feel like you can't do that as a school district, you don't have to do the full amount. But then the next year you have to do the amount plus make up. So it's hard to get behind on that. Kind of a history, the last 3 years we haven't had a price increase of 10 cents per meal. And the last time was 16-17. So it's been 3 years. We're due. The last 2 years was just 5 cents. And the calculator is recommending 10 cents this year. Any questions?
All right, so you're looking for approval of the increases as written?
As written, yep.
Kevin?
Cher, are we going to, I know we talked about meal prices once already for this. Will we see this again as we look at, is there a Taher thing that we have to look at, or is this the time that we were talking about?
This is what we were talking about.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if it's approved, then you won't see it again until next year.
Perfect.
Any other questions? Comments? That I would take a motion?
Motion to approve the fee schedule as outlined.
I'll second that.
Have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next agenda item, I'll call Melissa Joseph up to the stand to present it. RCC membership rates and supervisor requests. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, so I'm here to talk about increasing membership rates for the RCC. We've had you can see in your notes, we've gone from people with swipe cards from 1,000 up to 1,600 people with swipe cards in the last year and a half. Snap Fitness closing has helped that a little bit, but so our equipment is getting a ton of use. Also our athletics teams use it as well. So in order to come up with some money to, use all the use, I was thinking about raising it just $2 a month for adults. It's currently $30. It would go $32 a month, so $24 a year. And family memberships are currently $40 a month. That would go up to $45 a month, so $60 a year. Any questions about, like right now we have a treadmill that you can only walk on and another treadmill that's down, so they get, some of your members, you know how much use they get, so. Questions?
Do you want to just explain the other part of it so they can decide whether they're going to take action or just be briefed?
All the rest of the building supervisors and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, so the other thing is, our rentals have also gone up, so use of all of our facilities, Reams gyms, outdoor facilities, RCC high school gym has also increased, and so doing some research of other districts, a lot of districts have building supervisors, nighttime building supervisors, it just makes a lot of sense. It's too hard even for my RCC front desk staff to determine who's a member, who's not a member, who's here for a practice, who's not here for a practice, and there's just a ton of people in all of our areas at night, and the custodians are having to go unlock doors or, greet them or get them the things that they need, where most districts have a building supervisor on hand to take that over. So, the going rate is about $16 an hour that they pay a building supervisor, like Osseo, Buffalo. Some people include it in their rental fees. Some people just charge outright. It's just added to your rental. So when you get the bill at the end, it could just be like supervisory hours, $16 an hour, however many hours, or you can add $2 an hour to like a court or space use. So that can, depending on different districts do it differently. So our rationale, we would just need one, because we have 3 buildings. They would just go from building to building, help supervise, help greet people and do the things, unlock doors, make sure that they're treating the equipment properly, stuff like that. Because that's the other thing, like custodians can't, there's people running on top of the bleachers and the bleachers are closed, and they can't do that. They're doing their job. So that's the other thing that we have on the table here, is just hiring building supervisors. We do have them for tournaments. That's why you see me here a lot over the weekends. So, but we also need it for nighttime.
We also have the issue that, and it's hard to identify who, but some parents just drop their kids off, and somehow, if the buildings are open, then they drop them off, and then they pick them up 3 hours later. And that's a problem for our night staff, because they may not be there for an activity. And it's really important that we have some sense of who's in the building, and there's some liability that we have for that.
Absolutely.
And so along with that also is a few years ago when I first got here, the school board approved for 7th through 12th graders to be at the RCC after school. Over the last couple of years, oh, people just hear and they don't hear the grade. So we've had 3rd and 4th graders come over, just walk over. We've had 5th and 6th graders get off the bus and then walk over. And in the wintertime, even if you have a membership, there is not, there, you know, the courts are taken, like right now, we have so much snow, there's track in there from 3 to 6. And so if you're not in Rocket Power, and you even if you're in 7th grade, you can't go into the Rocket Power Center and lift weights unless you're in Rocket Power. So we've just had a ton of kids just come hang out after school, some till, you'd be surprised, 8 o'clock, some till, some get picked up at 5, 4:30. So I just kind of wanted to revisit that as well. We have a ton of kids, and the problem is if I'm not there, like I have access to campus, but my front desk staff does not. So if they're not on a membership, if they don't have a membership, and we have a 7th grader, and believe it or not, this happens because I've asked before, what's your last name? They just give a fake name because they know they're not supposed to be there. I've had that with 5th and 6th graders as well. I can do research, I can look up the campus, but if I'm not there, my front desk people don't have access to campus, which they shouldn't. They're front desk people. There's a lot of confidential information on there. So just kind of want to revisit that. Yes, the rationale was just, we don't want them downtown, but it also becomes a liability for us. Yes.
So when the students come in afterward, are they still swiping a card?
Some of them.
So they can be there without swiping a card, or we just
Yes.
can't manage that
The
right
board a few years ago approved 7th through 12th graders can be there without a membership from 3 to 5.
now? Gotcha, during that.
Yes. But now that we've done it for a few years, it just causes a few issues. One, there's not space.
Mhm.
2, they're taking the activity bus over, the middle schoolers are at least. 9th through 12th graders, really, they're not an issue because, they don't hang out for very long because it's not cool to hang out at the RTC, but middle school is 5th through 8th grade. And thank God, Bobby actually stopped the 5th and 6th grade problem she took care of that for us. So, but the 7th and 8th graders still, they take the activity bus over. Right now, we have, there's 100 kids on track. And so 50 of them are probably middle school students, and then we have 6th grade track, which is another 25 kids taking the activity buses over. We can't be having other middle school students taking the activity bus over. There's just not room. And then right now there's nothing for them to do except for be in the lobby or running through the high school. So those are my 3 things.
So when you say you're gonna revisit it, are you thinking of coming up with a different policy that we could talk about at a future meeting?
My recommendation would be to 9th through 12th graders would still be okay. Because again, we don't have as many issues with them. When I ask them their last name, they're fine. Most of them have cell phones, so and they're there with a buddy. So if something were to happen to them, we could get a hold of somebody. So my recommendation would be not to have the 7th and 8th graders be able to come over after school anymore. That is the part that's causing that. That's my recommendation.
Unless they have a membership.
Unless they have a membership.
We did at one point try to have a Galaxy program just for the middle school that was kind of specific to that age group, and we opened up the media center. It just was not very popular. The parents were not interested in paying for that. We did have some homework help after school also, and it just was not high enough enrollment to sustain it.
Yes.
Is there a reason, or obviously the board's different, but there was some rationale in that decision. Why would we have students who don't have a membership and are not engaged in activities come to the RCC? What do you remember what went into that thinking? And
Well, Paul can probably answer.
I think the board wanted to try it. They wanted to see how it would go. They didn't have information, so then rather than say no right away, I think they wanted to assume positive intent that things would go well. And I think with more information, we find out that maybe it is a bit of a problem that they didn't anticipate.
gotcha.
Is there a policy for, even if they have a membership, how old a student has to be when they don't have to have adult supervision with them?
Yes.
What is that age?
So, if you don't need 7th grade, 14, you have to be 14,
Okay.
that you can be in there by yourself.
That's just in the weight room though. You can be in the community center in the membership at a younger age than 14.
Without.
Correct. But, we still like you to be in the building if you're up to 12. We like parents to be in the building, parent or guardian to be in the building up to 12. 12 to 14, you can be in there alone. 14, you need to be in the weight room
Okay.
alone.
So, and maybe this is a question for, so there are two different things going on, right? So on our agenda, we're looking at the financial pieces of that. And maybe Amy, this is something for you as a chair too, and then it seems like there's some other stuff that we need to address as well, right? And so I'm not sure what the practice is, if we would add that to this, or if we would come back and address that in the future. And Paul and Amy, both of you, might.
I think number one, you would determine the rate. That's a yes or no, and you can do it either this meeting or next meeting. The second would be yes or no to the supervisor. And then I think they'll go back to the Community Ed Advisory Committee or go back to hammer out the details of the guidelines around who could be over there and when and so on, and bring
Come
that
with
back to
another
you.
proposal. Yeah.
Is there a certain time period when you would need a firm decision on the membership cost? Like, is there a time when things get printed, and is there a timeline for that for the community center, or is it, just want to make sure that we're meeting your
Well,
timelines?
the spring and summer brochure is due now, so I
Okay.
would like to, if we're gonna raise them, I wanna tell people now. So if we're gonna raise them July 1st, I would like them to know as early as possible.
Okay, so that's one.
You'll also know that we brought the athletic fees and the food prices, our community center fees, and we're also bringing the early childhood tuition and all those fees come at this time normally.
And then for the building supervisor, same question. Is that something that it's a very pressing matter where you need it
That's
like
not-
right now?
no,
Or it's
that's-
something that, hey, I want you guys to know that this is an issue and,
Definitely by next October,
oh,
yes.
Before the
But
winter.
I would
months.
like before, just, again, July 1st, because that's kind of when but that one's not as pressing, correct?
So let me ask a question on that particular issue though.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I'm reading this though, it just sounds like you're gonna just charge back the expenses to whomever is incurring the cost. So it's basically a break-even proposal, isn't it? If I'm understanding it correctly?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Makes it fairly,
Yeah.
fairly simple. So,
I mean, we may put it off till October or July, but you still have the liability knowing that you've got a need for supervision and it's not happening at this time. So that whether we say there's a supervisor or not, the district still continually has that liability. We mitigate some of the liability if we hire supervisors. So again, one side might be, when's the ideal time, and the other time is, the ideal time is right before you have a problem. If you know when the problem is, then you can hire somebody the day before the problem.
Can I ask another clarifying thing? Just on this, not to go back and rehash this piece, but if we know we're having an age thing happening right now and we're coming out with a new brochure, at the same time that we're changing rates, would it make sense to address the age issue in that piece? I mean, or are we really pushing that down the road?
For the 7th or 12th grade
Yeah.
item? That part, I don't advertise that in the brochure.
Okay. There's not ages on the brochure that says those.
In our contract, there is, just when you can be alone and stuff like that.
Okay.
Those questions, but saying, 7th or 12th graders can be at the RCC
imagine?
without a membership, I don't advertise that.
Gotcha. So
They
we're
find
not.
out
we-
from each other enough.
Gotcha. Okay.
is there any, sorry.
That's okay.
I was gonna ask, is there any relationship between the building supervisor and the issue of managing people being in the building when they shouldn't be in the building, you know, kids coming over from the middle school, whatever? Do you see that as something that the building supervisor would contribute to managing?
Possibly, but it's really just the supervisors. To me, the bigger issue is, I mean, we just had an issue last week, and we don't know, you know, people, sometimes doors are unlocked, and it's just like coaches, I mean, you know, you're a coach, do you want to coach, or do you want to be supervising siblings of the people you're coaching? So that's a more of an issue, more related just to rentals
Yep, got it.
than anything else.
Sure, okay, thank you.
That was pretty much the question I was gonna ask.
Okay, Jessica?
I guess I was thinking about the building supervisor. I mean, throughout the spring, whether we're outside or not, there is still basketball going on because they have spring leagues that start. That JO volleyball, there's still stuff it's still being used. It isn't like the kids get outside and our building's empty. It's being used, correct?
Correct.
So the need for a supervisor
And
doesn't go away until October. Like, we still have the need for that.
well, and even though it says building supervisor, it should say buildings and ground supervisor,
Right.
because we have so many rentals over the summer where it's like
Absolutely.
the turf needs to be, like the RCC closes, and the RCC can't watch the turf anyway, like, so people
No.
are up on the turf and they're renting it, and, you know, sometimes we're not open yet, or we close at 3 and they're still on there till 8 o'clock at night. So it's more of a buildings and ground supervisor,
Yes.
for rentals, rental buildings and ground supervisor.
Just for an example, as a former community ed or raw coach, there was a circumstance where I was here, and I felt really bad for the RCC front desk person because it's not their job to handle the situation that was going on at that time. I ended up sending my daughter home and staying there to handle the situation. And so for me, when I see this, I think that there is a real need for this, because that's a lot to put on someone who their job is to be there at the desk to watch people coming in and out and checking them in and answering questions there, that there is a need for that supervisor. I've seen it firsthand.
In every district that I've been in, there has been a supervisor for the after school and evening activities, and sometimes the extended weekend activities. I think the other thing that may come up in the future, depending upon board action, if we were ever to run an activity bus, that is one of the challenges, is to make sure who is going to get on the activity bus and who's not. You don't want to have somebody just hang out with their friends till 5:30 and then have a free ride home. Not that they you know, it's good for them to have a safe ride home, but you don't want to be responsible for them from 3 o'clock until 5:30.
Right.
So, we would be potentially voting on adding these fees. Would that go in effect, just clarify please, from July 1st? And then,
Somebody could make a motion, and you would, in the motion, determine when.
because it seems to me like they should both go at the same time, because then the personnel would be paid for by these fees, right?
Well, the one is the RCC membership fee,
Yeah.
correct? And that's separate from the supervisor fee would go on for the groups,
Correct.
correct?
Can that happen?
So that's
Okay.
different.
I just wanna make sure, I don't necessarily personally feel like, why do we have to wait till October? As long
Right.
as long as we can start adding that fee.
I agree. I was just saying the one is, they're both pressing, and technically, because I do all of my contracts and they sign a permit application fee, and we have our other fees, so this supervisory fee, most things we do with the fiscal year, which would be July 1st. So it would be great to have them both. We start telling people now, just so you know, next year as a renter, you're going to be, starting July 1st, you're gonna be, charged $16 an hour, or $2 extra an hour, however, we decided.
And would that be for all groups? I just know for like Special Olympics generally we used to track for free. Would you still, if it was a group that was using it without a fee, we'll have to come up with a policy for that too?
Yeah, but, yes, we'd have to come up for, yeah.
Is she ready?
Do you know what the ask is for the supervisor rate and everything?
I
Okay,
think so.
sure. Any further discussion? Go ahead, Kevin.
Can I make a motion?
Go for it.
All right, so I make a motion that we accept both, one, which is the RCC membership of $30 to $32 and $40 to $45. And what I would ask in this is a timeline that makes sense for implementation. So whether it's July 1st or whatever, going in the school year, if it makes more sense, we do it before that. So I'd make that motion that we do that.
Perfect. So we'll start with that first motion. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? And this specific motion is to approve membership fees as written.
With the
With the
timeline being
timeline.
able to be determined by the administration on where that.
Right. I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All right, I will take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so that motion carries. So RCC fees as recommended.
All
Mr.
right,
Campbell.
the second motion then would be under recommended actions where we see charge of $16 and split it up to each group on that wording there. I would make the motion that we accept that piece there, again determining on a date when that makes sense for the administration.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll second that.
second that.
Yep.
Just clarifying that piece then kind of brings it down from the B to et al. Down to the E part, kind of put in that same spot there. So it's a $16 charge, and then they talk about how they split it up, hire a supervisor to cover those hours listed, and then there's some rationale right there of why. So we have first and second?
No, first, I have any further, I was rereading it,
gotcha.
yes. Any further discussion on that? So it would not include the adding the $2 per hour to the current rental fees? It would, is that what your motion is? You would just start with B and move on? Or would it be
No,
all
the
three?
rental, I got you. So it would be all of that, sorry, on all the recommended
A, B,
pieces.
C,
I was
D,
putting
E.
the $2 upper bulk, but yeah, it would be that recommended piece there on the supervisor role.
Essentially, it's $16 an hour for the supervisor, and then these are all the ways that you're gonna break even
Mhm.
on A through E, essentially. So, correct.
Just a question for Paul and Melissa. Is there any concern when we have events at all the ball fields, up on the track and in a building, is there any concern that we would need to have more than one at that time? I mean, do we set a limit to like
You
a
did not,
supervisor can cover?
you did not set a limit as to how many, what you've said is that you want it to break even. If we have more groups going, that's up to the coordinator to
The
determine the
need.
schedule. If we
Perfect.
need 2 people,
So-
then we hire 2 people.
And then
Yeah, if
the
we have
groups would
something
split
going on,
between
yeah.
the total $32 an hour, then the groups would split that.
Correct, if there's a big softball tournament going on and
Right.
something on the track, and then there's also something in here between the RCC and the high school gym, there's gonna be 2 supervisors
Way
for
too
sure.
much going
Yeah,
on.
yeah, that,
Okay.
you might as well not have one, so, good question, yeah.
And the rental fees were just increased last year, correct?
Yes,
And that does not cover any sort of additional supervisory support, even though we haven't used them, right? So I think I just want to make sure that we increased the rates last year, just wondering how we're sitting, and are we charging an additional something on top of that?
I
Just
think that's an excellent point. We said we'd do it for a year, just to be able to see how that breaks out, and at the end of the year, we'll come back and give you kind of a rundown of what that looks like. We also adjusted the activity fees last year, so we'll have that same thing to look at. So we'll get through the June 30th, and then we'll be able to take a look.
So can I have discussion to
Yes,
better understand?
keep talking.
Because I know you're part of this committee, right?
Which one?
The art, what's going on in the commu, or that's
What it
you.
is now. I used to be.
You used to be
I
last
was
time.
yep,
So,
the last 2
so,
years.
I said when I started with B,
Mm-hmm.
and then you said, so what about A? Do you have a thought on that? I recognize that we raised fees, last year.
Well, raising fees and you're adding a $16 surcharge in addition to the fees that we already raised last year, potentially if one group is renting, is how I read it. So let me make sure I'm reading it right, so I know
To
what
me,
we're-
it,
yeah.
it should be A or B. It's $16 an hour and we do need that to cover the cost, because the rental fees, they weren't, and everybody else did, just like I said last year, everyone else around the area raised theirs as well. So we're back at we're still the cheapest place to rent, so.
So either do A.
Right,
or
I was
B.
just giving you like, yeah.
So
Options.
would it be best for us as a board to not decide between the two, to make a motion for for them to choose what they think would be best of the two, or you want we should choose between those two?
I think we have to.
We have to, because we have to set that,
So,
right?
yeah, so the administration should provide us with the recommendation of how exactly they want it to go. Right now, we kind of have a menu of some options, some things to consider, but maybe not as clear, like, I need this in order to make it float. Because if A is an option and B is an option, so if we could add an additional $2 to current rental fees, and that's
That
that.
would maybe cover
That's
it?
one, or you have this $16. So just, maybe can you help?
So, okay,
Yeah,
so
help us
just say Ross Softball is renting all 4 fields. So the $2 an hour isn't gonna cut it. That's for like when we have JO volleyball, when every single court in RCC high school, and then you could get away with the $2 extra an hour. But if you're just doing one space, then that's not gonna work, because we're $2 an hour, they rented it for 2 hours, we only made $4 and we're paying out 16. So if I had to choose between I would definitely just charge the $16 an hour and make sure we break even. That would
Yeah,
be my
I think it's the
recommendation.
only
That's
thing
what
you
my bet
really
is.
Mhm.
can do, given there's
Correct.
uncertainty, and you'd have to max out capacity basically to break even on the $2 an hour type of proposal. So assume you're not always gonna be at 100% capacity, and just ensure the person is
And
paid
if we're
for it.
dividing it out amongst the groups.
Yeah,
The only problem would be in that if you had 2 groups or 1 group, then you've got $16 that you say that you're gonna charge, because it's divided among all the groups, and if there's only one. So that's why you could say it's or. You could just say A or B, whichever is
The thing about it though, Paul, if you look at B, charge $16 and split it up each night to each group, so 3 groups get charged an extra. There's explaining, and then it says right there, if one group gets charged, that is the full $16.
Right.
So B kind of explains, more importantly, as I made the motion, it was, I think we need to hire someone at $16 an hour to be a building supervisor, is what I'm trying to get. I hear that's the recommendation, and so that's what my motion is trying to get across, is B look like the way to do it.
You need to cover it.
Right.
And then just, again, for clarification, would the supervisor only be on site when there's additional activities that are booked? Or would this be during all hours of operation for the community center?
Only when which is pretty much Monday through Friday.
Okay.
So yes, only when there's events. So we would have it'd be more than one building supervisor. We'd get a list of 3 people, we'd make a monthly schedule just like we do for the front desk and, and then that way if we need 2, we could have 2 on one night. So yeah, it would be by need basis, but even outdoor, Sunday through Thursday, actually, we have people here. It's pretty much every night.
I think one of the point of clarifications then, Paul had mentioned the activities bus and that this person would maybe help with that, but that would be a school-related activity potentially. So I'm just trying to understand where the funding and the structure, just to make sure we're doing right and making the right call with you, in partnership with you, getting you what you need.
Well, I think the good thing is that the rentals do go into the general fund, so any money made off of rentals do go into the general fund, so in a way, it doesn't come into community ed, so it's kind of still the same fund.
Okay, any other discussions on this one? We do have, I'm gonna ask maybe if we
Clarification.
why don't we,
Make a new motion.
would
So
you
I'll
be willing to
retract
table
my,
your?
yep,
Thank
I'll
you.
retract the motion I made so that we can create something in the same vein.
Thank you.
And may I make a suggestion? Because you're the C amongst us, will you make the motion? You don't wanna make the motion? All right, then again, I'll make the motion, specifically around the recommended action and charge the $16 an hour. Figure out how to split it up, for the addition of a building and ground supervisor.
Second to that?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is early childhood program tuition proposal. Is Tiffany here? Are you presenting
not.
that as well? Oh,
Yes.
Welcome back, stay at the podium. Thank you.
So, due to staffing and other things, we are looking to raise fees for the Launching Pad preschool first and also ECFE classes. So Launching Pad preschool would just be $10 a month, so $90 a year for a family. Tuition was increased last year by $25 a month, but due to, like we said, staffing and budgets, we're looking to raise it again $10 a month. And that does keep us within the price range of in-district and local area preschools.
I think when we changed the amount last time, we knew that it wasn't enough, but we didn't want to have it be one large jump for families. So we figured we'd do it over a period of time and phase it in. Tiffany runs a very, very quality program and very tight on her budgets, but you have to meet the costs.
Paul, how does free and reduced lunch impact this? Are there, or Melissa, you know this too, are there then different costs for free and reduced lunch families for this program?
There is a lot of tuition assistance in this program, yes, and we also provide busing, which is also at expense. So there is some money that comes out of the general fund, but then we have to cover the cost for the rest. 73% of the kids that are in the preschool take the bus, use transportation, and 93% of that 73% actually needs some sort of tuition help.
93% of the 73%.
Correct.
There's also.
So they're getting busing and they also need tuition assistance.
There's also scholarships that come from the state.
Yeah.
And Tiffany's been great about going out and actively pursuing grants. But once again, they still don't meet the full cost
Yeah.
of the program. And she's in the process of getting ready to start registering, so again, it would be important for her to be able to share those tuitions with families.
Are we gonna discuss then the ECFE one? Are we gonna do these separately? The family education?
Might be just as easy if willing just to do them separately, just to
Yeah.
keep it nice and clear.
Yeah, no, I would.
Okay, perfect.
That's fine with me. I
Okay.
just wanna make sure that we're,
Yep. Does anyone have any further discussion around the preschool rates, questions, concerns? And again, this is time sensitive is my understanding, so that we can get things out to our community members. So with that, I would take a motion if anyone is willing.
I'll make the motion to approve the Launchpad preschool tuition proposal for 2019-2020.
Take a second for that.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So that motion carries. Next is the ECFE fee increase proposal.
So this is just parent-child class fees by $5 per quarter and family class $5 per quarter. These fees have remained steady for 10 plus years. So I'll just leave that explanation. That might be enough.
And they're also on a sliding scale, so
Yes.
it is flexible for income.
All right. Anyone have any questions regarding this? That I would entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that we accept the proposal as written and increase the fees for early child family education.
All right, I have a motion. Any second?
I'll second.
Oh. Who wins? I have a motion. Beth wins. All right. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you done your part. All right, next agenda item is acknowledgement of contributions, and this will be a resolution. Superintendent Duran, would you like to present?
We have two of our donations tonight that would like to recommend that the board acknowledge. Vote by resolution to accept Rockford Chamber of Commerce $200, which is for a DECA activity account, and then Diane Mutter $500 for the robotics activity account.
So then I would take a motion to pass the resolution as written.
Motion to pass the resolution to accept the donations as written.
A second?
Second?
Any further discussion? And this is not a roll call resolution, this is just a regular vote, so all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Oh, is it roll call?
Yes.
Oh, I apologize. Okay, thank you.
Do that too.
Sorry, we'll do a roll call vote. All right, Brady Anderson.
Aye.
Kevin Campbell.
Aye.
Eric Gordy is absent. Beth Praska.
Aye.
Jessica Johnson.
Aye.
Amy Edwards. Aye. Resolution passes. Thank you. All right. Next agenda item is the elementary principal's report. Is Brenda? Brenda, come on up. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to update you on our kindergarten roundup. We had kindergarten roundup on March 7th. We had lots and lots of happy little faces and lots of parents that were excited. We are currently sitting at 83 confirmed attending for next year. We did have 90 that attended that night. I know a few didn't have paperwork and some of that with them, so we are following up with them and just making sure that we can help them with any paperwork. We did have a couple tours that I had given that said, contacted me that afternoon and said, can we still come to Roundup? We're following you on Facebook and we're excited, and absolutely. So they've been following up with me on some emails. We've been exchanging information, and so all in all, we're moving forward with Roundup and our enrollment for next year. And anybody that we know is out there that we haven't connected with, we're calling and making sure we're trying and get in touch with those folks. So that's basically my report. Just one other thing, I've talked about our review and reflection that we've had at our school. We do have Northwest Suburban coming in this Thursday to go through those results with us. As always, they talk as though it's not an evaluation of us, but really about growth areas and areas of excellence and how we can continue those, and then how we can move forward on those areas that we can improve upon. So we're looking forward to meeting with them.
If anyone wants to have confirmation that you're getting older, you just looked at the kindergarten classes, the class of 2032.
And it always makes parents kind of shudder a little bit, and I always tell them it'll be here before you know it. And I cannot tell you how many people stopped me in the hall or gave me a phone call the next day, because I always tell them, your child is going to get up tomorrow and say, I'm in kindergarten now. Yeah. And that's why we do the sunflowers, and that's why we do all of that. And they said, my child got up this morning and said, no, I'm going to kindergarten today. How do you know that? And I said, it happens every year. So yeah, they're very excited though. So.
Quick question, can you refresh my memory on the ALICE training?
Yes.
Thank you.
ALICE training is training for active shooter. And so that is really about really the practice of no longer just going in and sitting and hiding. It's really several different strategies of how to help get kids out safely.
And we're in the process of training staff. So we sent 3 staff members to ALICE training. We had previously sent other staff members, and so we'll be reviewing the emergency procedures over the summer and putting those in place with we won't necessarily just do ALICE, but we'll take pieces of several of the programs and kind of Rockfordize it so that it works for our school.
Kathy and I just went to a training on reunification as well. Everybody gets out, and then now how to get everybody back to their parents safely. So it's like my husband said to me, I'm glad you really had a good two days, but I'm really sad that you had to go to that. And I said, I agree, it's the world we live in. So, but it was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And there's a lot of work prior to and a lot of work afterwards. I spent almost an hour and a half after school tonight taking my test, so I'm officially certified ALICE trainer. So, yeah.
Any other questions?
Question on the enrollment numbers for kindergarten. Do those typically go up, down, stay about the same from Roundup to the start of the year?
They go up, usually.
Okay.
Yeah. We, since I've been here, in the 13 years I've been here, it varies. We always have ended up around that 115, 120 has been pretty typical. We were much higher when when we had the edge in the state, and we were offering all day, every day tuition-free kindergarten, and we were one of the few districts that was doing that. So we had more numbers at that time, but yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it continues to go up, and it's amazing how some people go, oh, I was supposed to do that? Mm-hmm. And we continue to call, and so, yeah.
Any other questions? Great, thanks Brenda. Thank you. All right. Next agenda item, Rockford Middle School. I'll call Bobby up to the podium.
Good evening, everyone. I'm very excited. It is nice that we have students here tonight, which is the reason that we're all here. And so before we start with what I'm here to show off, one event of note that's coming is our Arts and Academic Showcase, which is the 11th of April, 5 to 7 o'clock. So please, if you have room in your schedule, come on out to that. It's an amazing event, obviously, with our elementary students coming from a fine arts magnet school. What they create at the middle school is of very high quality. So we have our FFA, 5 FFA members here, and if I can start bragging, and I shouldn't get to brag because there's parents here as well, but 5 middle school students sitting for 50 minutes at a board meeting, please, right?
Not easy.
Why don't you come up here? And I am not going to take their time because they have very important things to tell you. I told them before they came in that I brag about them on a regular basis, and they looked a little bit shocked. And they told me that they practice Robert's Rule, so this was a very good opportunity for them to see it in action, right? And then they get to hear about an issue that relates to them directly. The 7th and 8th, because they heard me do the announcement, didn't you, about 5th and 6th graders not going to the RCC after school. Do you remember that? So there's follow through with that as well, so I appreciate that. So I'm going to get out of the way and let the important people have your attention.
Hi, thank you. I'm Mackenzie Gregory. The National FFA organization is the largest student organization in the U.S. And at Rockford Middle School and as well as the high school, we're fortunate that our district allows students in grades 7 through 12 to participate. Many know or believe that FFA stands for Future Farmers of America, but in 1988 it was changed to the National FFA organization to reflect the growing diversity among its members, because many students didn't and still don't fit the typical farmer role that fits with FFA, Future Farmers of America. So students in Rockford begin to learn about FFA starting in 5th grade through high school and become aware of the growth and leadership opportunities within it. Kids here like being part of FFA for various reasons that they'll share with you in a moment, but it's important to recognize that it's much like being on an athletic team, that kids aren't just there to build skills like running fast and throwing further, but they help prepare them for things in their future like communicating about schedules, meeting new people, and keeping commitments. Students participate in community service through fundraisers for the food shelf, making tie blankets for senior living communities, leadership developments at Camp Ittahoppy, and with career development events where they compete against high schoolers across the state. They bring awareness to the world of agriculture in our own schools through Kindergarten Farm Day and National FFA Week. FFA is really an extension of what happens in the agri-science classroom as well as in other classes. In schools, we focus on helping others, teaching about certain skills like where our food has come from and how it's grown, and growing as a person. Involvement in FFA builds on what students learn in the classroom, and it works to help them build those skills they can use in other areas of their life. So there's a few members here, and we're going to start with 7th grader Cole Cindy.
The Rockford Middle School is a super unique chapter. Our chapter was first started in 2014, and it's been an amazing 5 years. Our school was the first in the state to have a middle school only FFA chapter. Each year we have teams qualify for state competitions as well. Our chapter has also had many people who have went out of the box to try new things. Our chapter has also raised money to donate to the local food shelf through our milk drive. We have also volunteered at the 1,000 Hearts to pack meals for our community, and we partner with the kindergartners at the elementary school for Farm Day in the spring. There are many benefits from being involved in FFA. One is my communication skills. If I did not join FFA, I would still be scared to go in front of the class and present a slideshow. However, with me being on a conduct team, I'm now able to talk in front of the class without being scared or shy. Another benefit is that I know more about fish and wildlife species, and this helps me because my family loves to hunt and fish, so now I can identify birds and fish better. Thank you.
Nice job.
So the competitions that we do are called CDEs, which stands for Career Development Events, and they're friendly competitions between other FFA chapters that go from the regional to state to national levels. They help us develop a wide variety of skills in different fields. Some examples of CDEs are fish and wildlife, floriculture, small engines, nursery and landscaping, forestry, or horse evaluation. And you have to study and practice for your competition. Some examples that I've been in are poultry evaluation and small animals. 2 ways I'm involved in FFA are the competitions and volunteering. This year I'm competing in poultry evaluation, creed speaking, and conduct of meetings. and my teams qualified for state in poultry and conduct of meetings. We volunteer for many things, but my personal favorite is helping out at Culver's, where we help serve customers and we get a bit of experience in the food service industry. One of my best gains from being an FFA member is helping me develop my responsibility, because you have to study for your competitions and you don't really want to let your team down. And then also just doing things like this and representing our chapter.
Caitlin, will you tell me?
Caitlin O'Halina,
What grade are you in?
8th.
My name is Bradley Gussie, and I'm in 7th grade. So when I heard of FFA, I was really pumped to join it because I love to be outdoors and learning about all the animals and farm animals that have to do with FFA. I also joined it so it can help me with leadership skills, and FFA can also help me with my communication skills by asking other students in other chapters why they're involved in FFA. One of my gains are learning about fish and wildlife and the different types of animals and where they live, how they survive, and places that they stay in. My other gain is you get to meet people and boost your learning experiences.
Awesome. Great job, guys.
I'm Claire Check and I'm in 8th grade. So one of the LEEs I do is conduct of meetings, which is a competition in which 7 people, the president, vice president, sentinel, treasurer, advisor, reporter, and secretary, compete together to hold a meeting using opening and closing ceremonies and Robert's rules. And they develop leadership, problem solving, and decision-making skills. And during the competitions, we take a written exam on officer duties or overall rules. And then we hold a meeting, and you get points based on how well you do and if you get all your debates in. And then the meeting will have a main motion that you have to start debating on, and then it evolves around that motion, and then you have to have 3 motions that you debate on, and each member has to have 3 debates. And then 2 ways I'm involved in FFA is I do the competitions and volunteering. I participate in conduct of meetings, floriculture, and small engines. Our middle school team that I'm on are going to state for conduct of meetings, and then the floriculture state qualifier hasn't happened yet. So we volunteer at various events, but my favorite so far this year has been volunteering at 101 Market. And then some of the gains I have from being a FFA member is I developed leadership and responsibility skills, because certain CDEs or LDEs need you to be more responsible about learning your part, and you don't want to let any of the other members of your team down. And then you get leadership skills at volunteering events if you have to lead certain events or help other people.
Awesome. So Claire, is rescinding a motion a thing? It's not a jet. All right.
They would amend the motion.
All right.
That's right. Because I was going to ask, were you keeping score for us?
Well done. Thank you.
I'll say I was nervous when I saw you all in the crowd. So.
We use Bob's rules of order.
Hi, my name is Claire Shikowski. I'm in 8th grade. I am involved in both poultry and Creed for my CDEs, but I love doing volunteering as it comes with FFA. One of my personal favorite volunteering events was when we went meal packing with Kids Against Hunger for 1,000 Hearts Day last year. It was incredibly fulfilling to know that the food we packed went all the way to Haiti. And I believe on that particular day we packed around 6,400 meals. And I think that with the numbers that we had that day, each of us had packed over 200 meals. So that was pretty great. Poultry, I believe Caitlin already spoke about poultry evaluation and Creed, which both of those I am very lucky enough to travel to state with my poultry team and then go for Creed this year. But Creed speaking as a CDE is a competition where you read the 5-paragraph document, which was written by E.M. Tiffany. It serves to establish collective visions and goals for every member in the chapter, regardless of their rank. So officer, advisor, member. The Creed provides a purpose and direction for the organization, and it is
and for its over 669,000 members nationwide. That's a lot. So I think the biggest thing that I would gain from FFA is probably time management. Is something that I used to struggle with a lot, being that I would get stressed out when I would get all too busy. Being a part of the officer team comes with a lot more tasks and responsibilities that can't be rushed. I've learned how to sort out my priorities and get more done in less time, therefore letting me take advantage of new opportunities and having a successful school and extracurricular balance. So I thank you all for supporting FFA and our Rockford Middle School FFA. Any questions?
Anyone have any questions?
I think you all did an amazing job, thank you. And I want you to know I have a passion for FFA. My husband and my son are both, they work in the agriculture industry, so in about 8 years, if you need a job, I can probably help you out, okay?
And I'd like to just give Mackenzie Gregory a nod. She works very hard as both our ag teacher and the instructor for FFA. She is a key player in what we do at the middle school. In our environmental emphasis, I mean, it kind of all comes back to Mackenzie. So just to kind of make sure that you all know the important work she does with these kids. So yeah, it's hard to believe they're doing Thank you very much. Well, very well done, you guys.
I had the opportunity to attend the end of year FFA banquet last year, and it was just, I was blown away by all of the different activities that all of the kids do, and then also, like, they make the banquet into an official meeting, and you're like immersed in it. And it was just like, it was probably one of the most, it was so powerful. So hats off for that too. I mean, it's just really cool, really cool. And the creed, when that is read, it's just, it gets you right in the heart. So, yeah. So anyway, cool. Thanks for joining us tonight, Bobby. Nice job.
So we're gonna do the FFA students and parents a favor. You don't have to stay for the remainder of the meeting. Because you're gonna try to figure out how are we gonna slip out. There's no good way to slip out. Sometimes it's really helpful to point out goals. I think Brenda and Bobby have achieved the goal of putting a photograph in their report. We'll set a goal for Rhonda that sometimes in the next couple of months she'll figure out how to put a photograph on her page.
That's a shot.
It took Bobby a year to figure that one out.
What is the first meeting?
First meeting you had it? Oh, okay, all right.
So with that, I would like to call our Rockford High School principal, Rhonda, up to the podium. Yes, it's a hard act to follow, but I know you'll do just fine.
Every month I have to follow my colleagues. I have to, you know what, next month, we're gonna have show and tell.
Next month is your month.
We're Sparman. Decca's going to national. No, good evening, everyone. Directors, Superintendent Durant. Just a couple of informational items, if I may. First is a reflection on our curriculum fair that we had just a couple of weeks ago. It was actually postponed. Well, actually, we had to combine because we were going to have a curriculum fair in February 4th, which was one of our snow days, so we had to combine them. But from all the reports that I've heard, it was very well attended. All the reports, I was here. But I mean, in terms of comparing them to years past, it was very well attended. One of the reasons I think that occurred was, number one, it was postponed. But then number two, the last couple of events that we've had, we've tried to bundle a couple of events, and we did it on curriculum night. So we had the curriculum fair, and then right after the curriculum fair, the band and choir teachers had their meeting for their trip. And so by bundling those things, I think we got a better turnout. I know Dan Pratt is not here tonight, but a few weeks ago when we had our spring coaches meeting, we also bundled that, if you will, with a choir concert. And Dan was saying that that was probably the most attended spring meeting, because the spring usually tapers off a little bit. but that one was very well attended. So we're trying to bundle some things, not so that they compete against each other, it's usually one and then the other. So hopefully our families appreciate that we're trying to look after their time. Second item, MCAs, just kind of an informational item that we're changing our format this year. In the past, we have administers MCAs, and for high school kids, it's a reading test for our sophomores, a math test for our juniors, and then a science test for biology students, which for us is mostly our sophomores. But in the past, we have run those tests over the course of 3, sometimes 4 days in one class. So then the kids would, let's say it's an English class, they would go to that English class, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday into Thursday, they would be working on that MCA exam. And so it was taking almost a week of instructional time away from the kids for their class. So we're going to change it up this year, and we're going to test all of our sophomores in the beginning of the day, periods 1 through 3, and that'll be on Tuesday, April 9th, and then on Thursday, April 11th, we'll do the math, periods 1 through 3, and then the following week we'll do the science. A couple of reasons why we're doing that. Number one is just the new schedule. In years past, we had a 60-minute class period, and even with a 60-minute class period, it was still taking several days to do the MCA exam. And now this year, because we've changed our schedule, with 50-minute class periods, we just didn't want that to possibly extend into 4 or even 5 days. So that's one reason. Second is, of course, the instructional time that it's taking away from our kids in that curriculum area. And then third, we just wanted to try a new model because we're hoping with IB coming in, we're going to grow a little bit, the high school, in terms of enrollment. And so we're trying to plan for that. We do have a plan to what's the word? Touch base, that's not the word I'm looking for. Get some feedback, thank you. Get some feedback from some of our juniors after we test, because our juniors would have done the MCAs last year using the old model, and now this year using the new model. And so we're gonna ask our juniors what they thought about the two models to get their feedback as well. And then the last thing, this is just a heads up that we have an event coming up sponsored by RAW, and that's Screenagers, which is a documentary, if you will, about the use of social media with our students. I've actually seen it before. It's a pretty well directed and produced piece of film, and I hope everyone comes out for that. It's on April 18th, right here in our auditorium at 7 p.m. And that's sponsored by RAW.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Questions?
I'd also like to thank Rhonda for going up to Duluth with our robotics team. Sometimes they're the kind of the unsung champions. They're working behind the scenes. They're working at night. They go to competitions. They don't have a lot of fans, and it was really fun to see you go up there and represent and take a picture with the kids up at Duluth. And
They did a nice job. They did a really nice job.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And that was also, I think, during some not great weather,
Right.
wind, and lots of things. So, and that was a very busy present week that you had with all of the different games and with the robotics and everything. So, yeah,
But it's fun.
Kind of
That's
sight
why we do
everywhere.
this.
Oh,
This is why we do
Bear
this.
was that week too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big week.
It was a big
Thank
week.
Thank you. All right, next, our Director of Teaching and Learning's report. I would like to call Kevin to the podium. Uh-oh, he's got big books.
It's fun and stuff.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. We'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
All right. Happy almost spring. Hey, speaking of weather, it's the snow's going to be gone by the end of the week. That's my prediction. So I'm going to stick with it. A couple of things here. Going on that MCA MTest testing update here. All paraprofessionals at this point have been trained. All testing proctors will be trained by the end of the week this week. We'll get everybody caught up who hasn't been. We have a group session that's ready to go at 2 o'clock on Friday for anybody who couldn't do it on their own. And so that will take care of all of our proctor training. Let's see, MTAS testing, that schedule has been finalized and should be an updated posting on our website showing the exact dates and the times. And I appreciate the work that the principals have done with me and the people that they've gotten from their buildings to help get those schedules out there. It's a lot of work, and it's been an interesting learning process for me this year too, so I really appreciate the help that they've given me. My little stack of books here is just a representation of some of the materials that are starting to trickle in for MYP in particular. Once they find out that you are in the market, they'll send you some stuff. But I think it's worth taking a look at, and we can pass them around in just a second here. What you're seeing here are just different. I'm going to take one, pass one around here. You're seeing materials now that are crafted specifically for MYP, and that they reflect both the MYP unit planner and what's called the approaches to learning. And if you just take a look at some of these, what we're seeing more and more about that is they look a little different than a traditional textbook. And they do break it down into the MYP learning standards and things like the different skills, the thinking, communication, social skills that are applied through MYP. Also inquiry, local, global issues. They're all kind of written out in these textbooks in a little different way. We'll start taking a look at these different materials through a curriculum review process, and I'll share that process with you once we've kind of finalized what that is. As I've dug through, I haven't found anything that has necessarily been used in the past for a formal curriculum review process, so I've reached out to our friends in Orono and West Tonka, some of the other school districts around the area, and I've asked for their curriculum review process, and I am in the process of kind of coming up with something for Rockford. I'll share that with you when we get to that. Yes?
So, just curious, I'm holding a MYP physics. There's physics in the MYP program. Is that kind of how that works?
That's correct.
The early years program?
Yes.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and if you take a look within the content area, it does look a little bit different than what you've seen in the past, but this is what our teachers are training on. The teachers that just got, and I'm not going to steal Matthew's thunder. He's got some information to share with you too regarding IB. So, but I just wanted to share that with you just so you get an idea of kind of what's coming down at us too. Yeah.
Are these consumable then? Would they get?
Those are not
like
necessarily consumable. Yeah.
It just,
And I'm seeing more and more of the textbooks that are out there. They are more soft covered. I don't see a ton of hard covered texts. I've noticed that in the last few years. So, yeah, that is a point. That they are for 9th and 10th grade students though too. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Because 9th and 10th grade students take care of their textbooks.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, any questions? I'm up here again in a few minutes, so I don't have as much with this.
Can I take this one home? There's some
No,
interesting
you
stuff in
can't.
there.
That one is actually.
This one's really good.
I know
love
it is. That's what I've been looking at too. So,
it's really good.
I agree. I like that one.
One of the things in a perfect world, we would have been lucky enough to successfully pass the levy for technology, because when you look at the materials, there are so much that's interconnected with technology, and it is one of those things that we're gonna have to still try to figure out how to crack that nut and make sure that we have our students have those opportunities, and it's gonna be a lot of prioritization and choices.
Yeah. So we'll have more to share as we move along here. So yeah, continue to look at it as all you want, but we'll pass them around too, if you don't mind.
Give it up.
I know it's a good one. I agree.
It is really good. There's some really good stuff in there.
And like I said, this is not necessarily the book that we're going to end up on, but it will be some of the stuff that we put through our curriculum review process.
And so Kevin, you were saying there's multiple different kind of
There's a few.
curriculums?
Yeah, and I've seen 3 at this point. This particular group, I think it's Hoder, they have a pretty good line of materials. So.
And when will we need to decide in
Well,
order to,
yeah.
or not we, but.
Yeah. No, well, we're starting to look now. We want these pieces in place for the teachers, at least have a decision for them so they can start looking at it over the summer while we continue to write our unit plans as we kind of move forward, so, yeah. It's important.
Is it important that all subjects use the same curriculum company? Like at elementary, you could use one
Right.
company for reading, one for math, I'm guessing. In IB, it should all be the same company?
You know, I think that's something that we'll have to discuss. I don't know that it's important. I think we gotta get the best quality materials that are possible. That being said, the unit planner is what kind of brings everything together with
Okay.
the MYP.
So will someone be breaking that down as you make the decision about?
Yeah, and I think we gotta talk to our teachers and we need to talk to our community and see what makes sense for Rockford. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, Kevin, one more thing I just thought of. When we adopted curriculum at the elementary, we were able to visit some schools
Mhm.
that had used that, so perhaps that's something to think about.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah,
If you could-
and we've talked about this before, as our network grows, where it's easier and easier to reach out and to find the schools that have used different materials. The one thing I will say, that we learned when we were at head of schools training is that a lot of the teachers that we talked to, like I've said before, said they really wish they would have started with this curriculum and had something in hand as they walk into it. And I think we're in a very good spot to be able to do that for our teachers. So I feel good about that, so.
Especially if we can
point.
break down what pieces of technology do they really feel are essential, and maybe what pieces, so if there's districts that have used certain
Yeah.
items, it helps, then the teachers are actually getting the honest opinion from another teacher that's used it versus a curriculum company that's trying to sell it to you.
And as we send our teachers out between now and the summer for that training, it's an important piece too, yeah.
Thank you.
Jessica?
And just the curriculum is also covered under the grant, correct?
Correct.
All of that is covered. I just thought that would be important
Yeah.
to clarify.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is from our principal on special assignment, IB report. Matthew, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. Now, are we going to talk as long as we did at the work session? I wish that we could. I know that we can't. I'd like to just follow up a little bit on Kevin, what you just asked about physics. One of the things we're doing is meeting with our departments and talking about scope and sequence. So, in fact, we're looking at physics being our 9th grade offering. And things are in flux. There's always change. The science standards are undergoing change at the state level, but we're very excited that we're changing right now and we're getting our teachers involved, engaged, and looking at the materials, as Kevin said. I want to give one more clarification. IB doesn't necessarily provide curriculum, it provides a framework. So especially that unit planner, and that gives a lot of latitude and a lot of freedom to individual teachers. Because when you think about it, there's 4,700 IB schools across the world. There's no way you can say one curriculum fits all of them. So I just want to make sure we clarified that. As far as our agenda tonight, I want to give a little bit of an update. Our International Baccalaureate applications are due April 1st, and we're doing that, they're due either April 1st or October 1st. We want to meet this April 1st deadline because then that will allow us to initiate MYP programming for our 9th graders starting the fall of 2019, and then also meet that expectation date of beginning to offer diploma program classes and career program classes in the fall of the 21-22 school year. So that's why we're really focused. We're working on budget right now. You mentioned the curriculum items. That is a line item in our budget. We're working on finalizing our budget and working on finalizing everything for our applications for over these next couple weeks. Number 2, professional development. This has just been unprecedented opportunity, and I really I give Rhonda Dean a lot of I'm very grateful. She's allowed us on Wednesday mornings to really make these our Wednesday IB workshops, and we met your seats are a little warm because our IB advisory committee met earlier tonight after school for an hour, and we focused on our Rockford High School mission and vision. And what is it now? What do we stand for? What are our greatest strengths that are in this building? There's a lot of assets, and we want to honor them. We want to honor the contributions of our teachers that have worked here for 5 months or 5 years or 35 years. And we also are looking to the future because we know we're going to be pursuing international baccalaureate programming, and we're really looking at how we can blend and merge and mesh those efforts. So I wish you could have seen it, because our teachers and the way that they're collaborating and working together and taking the input that all Rockford High School teachers gave of what are our strengths, what type of graduate do we want to deliver to the world. It's really inspiring work, and it's really impressive by our teachers, and we're looking forward. On Friday we have 4 hours of professional development. That's the first thing we're going to start with. And so I think it will be heartening for the teachers to know, okay, we participated in Mission Vision. Now that didn't go into some file that's sitting in Matthew's desk somewhere. We're coming right back to it, and the IB Advisory Committee has been a great group to really process this information. And then our external professional development, we have a group that just came back from Houston, so that was a social studies, 3 social studies teachers and an art teacher. They're on fire. They are really, really excited, and they want to meet and debrief with myself. They want to present to our group. That's one of our internal traditions now, is whenever someone comes back from a training, that they share out what were the positives, what are some questions you have, what are your suggestions for the next group that goes out. That can be as simple as, make sure you get the shuttle organized before you get to the airport. But we're very, very excited. And to the question prior about what does the grant cover? The grant covers all of this professional development. And we talked a little bit at the board work session about, how will students that are currently at Rockford High School be impacted? They'll all be impacted, because our goal is to get as many teachers trained by the start of next school year as possible. And you can't help but get better when you're sharing the best practices that we're doing at Rockford High School, and you're meeting people from around the country, around the world, and hearing the great things that they do. So that's kind of where we stand right now with professional development. Feedback opportunities. In every weekly parent bulletin at both the middle school level and the high school level, I've included our feedback form. It's a quick Google form. It's 2 questions. We haven't had a ton of traffic on that, but I have had several parents that came in on our Monday, March 4th IB presentations. And when people come back for a 90-minute meeting and then come back a week later for a 90-minute meeting, you can tell they're invested. They really care, and they're not just asking questions about their kid, they're asking questions about all kids. So that's been very helpful to have that engagement. There'll be more. We're going to meet the Wednesday after spring break with our current seniors, and that's to kind of take them back to the future of, think about when you were a sophomore, what path would you have pursued on the diploma program? So those 10 are excited. I told them I'd buy them a little bit of lunch and a little snack, so they're excited to come for that, but they're excited to share their perspective. And what better group than the ones that just are finishing and have experienced everything that Rockford High School has to offer. So that's where we stand right now. Are there any questions I can answer for you?
Do you feel on pace?
Well, we're doing the best we can, and we're doing everything. I mean, that April 1 is going to happen. There's just no, that's, if my wife is going to help me over spring break and get those things in, we're gonna get them in. And then we're doing all of our proactive communication with Northwest Suburban, who is then communicating with the federal government. So we feel as we keep expanding our network, the more people we know, the more advice and insights that we can gain. So the more we know, the more we don't know. And I'm not anxious about that, I'm excited about that. But I will be very honest with you. There is a continuum of anxiety, and the change process is difficult. And we're talking about changing just about everything at this high school. So how do we do that, supporting all the students, staff, and families that are here currently, and then our future students and families that maybe they did have older siblings attend, older children attend. Rockford's going to be different. It's going to be a different dynamic, and so we want to support everyone through that process. And you can send everyone my way, have them email me. I don't really have an office right now. I just kind of am mobile, so that's flexible. I can meet people where they're at.
And then our existing 8th grade Northwest Suburban open enrolled kids, they know about this for
Yes,
next year really, really well? Like
don't-
it's been communicated, yes, true?
Yes, I don't want to put words in Dr. Anderson Hume's mouth, but she's had connections with the current 8th graders that are in Northwest Suburban. I've talked to as many as I can at our IB lunch bunches. There are some folks that have already made their decision, they're going, and that happens every year. There's always going to be some movement. We just want to keep as many students here and keep the positive experience going, the learning experience. And now that they do have transportation, that's a really powerful tool of this part of this grant.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Matthew, when will we be able to look at those numbers and see if it's having that numerical growth number that we're optimistic it will?
I think I can answer that. That's gonna actually take some time, probably three years. I mean, it's not instantaneous. Anytime you make a change, you could potentially have a drop in numbers. But it's the sustainability, that's why the grant is a 5-year grant. And I think the federal government has seen that it's really important to have that long-term financial support and ongoing training to be able to make sure that you make it an institutionalized change versus just a quick change.
Any other questions or comments? Thanks, Matthew.
It's like I don't want to leave, I want to keep talking.
I
Thank you,
know,
folks.
I know. Thank
Thank you.
you. All right, our next agenda item is our activities director report, and I think, Paul, you're presenting on behalf of Dan, is that correct?
Well, this is just a written report from our activities director who's not here this evening, and I'll just leave it up to you as members, if you have any questions. Otherwise, it's pretty self-explanatory. I think we've started our spring sports and we have a lot of snow. We have to figure out how to move for softball and baseball and for track. I know that some of our community members and coaches have worked with the Buildings and Grounds Department to try and see what they can do to melt snow faster. Jim has got some tricks up his sleeve. I'm not sure what they are, but and we have our DECA program that's having just an outstanding year, and you'll hear a little bit about that in the future about their upcoming trips. And we also have our trap shooting team.
Impressive. Thank you. Any questions? Great. Our next agenda item is a target services proposal. Kevin. Thank you.
All right, and I did say the snow will be gone by Friday, so don't worry about that at all. So targeted services, if you see here, we work with Wright Technical Center. We did this last year. This was the first project that I got to jump into as I entered Rockford last year. And if you look at kind of the summary of last year, we had about 84 students that were kind of in and out of the program. For the 4-week periods. 4 weeks happens at Reams, 4 weeks happens at Maple Hill, at the Hope Center. I just had a conversation with Jill over at the Hope Center this afternoon, and they are all excited and ready to go. We kind of agreed on some dates if this gets approved. So I wanted to make sure that all that stuff was in line before we brought this to you. I think we've had a history of doing this for a number of years, and with a conservative estimate of 80 students, my estimation was that it would cost us for $21,622.99. It would cost worth of funding. It would cost us about $2,700. So I am asking that this recommendation be accepted as proposed.
And I know that the board is always looking to see if it's a profit or a loss. Really to have students that are receiving extra instruction that can happen over summer school for 80 students, I think $2,700 is a very reasonable amount of money to take out of our general fund to cover the cost of educating students that may need that extra help.
I just want to clarify, does everybody on the board understand where the funding comes from this, perhaps? Do you? it's based on attendance from students. If you
Yeah.
have any, I'm sure Kevin can clarify, but if you have any questions, where the funding's coming from and how that works out. Because it's a little bit complicated.
It is a little bit complicated, and I don't know if it's, I think the formula is in here somewhere. It's per hour, per student, we get funding. And so the more we can encourage students to get here, the better. And one of the pieces that I was encouraged to do was to get this out as soon as possible. Then we can contact elementary parents quicker. In fact, now the advice has been, let's do this next year in February, so that we can hit that March conference time. We missed it by like a day. I'm like, okay, we'll do it in February next year. So, but the sooner we get it out, the more students we get. And I know it got pushed off very late last year, and they were still able to pull in 80 plus students last year. So I really do think the number of 80 is conservative if we get a jump on this.
And they get the FAST assessment in the winter, so you could use that assessment data to encourage the students.
Yeah,
that are proficient.
and for your third and fourth graders, they will have taken the MCAs,
Right.
and we should have some preliminary data back from them.
But you don't have to wait for the MCA.
Yeah.
So you can use the FAST data to.
Yeah, and it's typically what I believe that's what they used last year, was all that FAST data as we move forward with that targeted service, yeah.
And I would encourage the teachers that teach in it to use that same FAST data, and that would maybe be some data that could be brought to the board, because I do believe in the
Yeah.
past they have shown growth, and that would be something that would be nice to see.
And that was a takeaway from last year too, and I kind of ran with what they had in place, and I did get some feedback from parents at the end. Well, we'd like to see that growth, and what was that measurement? And so that's a piece that we'll put in place.
So if you need help breaking that down, because there's just different areas that you can look at that would be a little bit easier on the teacher's shoulders to take on.
Yeah. So how do students get enrolled in this program?
If again, I came into it after they're enrolled, but I know the application process. The teachers actually recommended the application last year, sent it home with the kids. Again, they got that application back, and I believe they had recommended 115 to 120 kids last year, and it came real late in May, like I said, and it was kind of a little crunch for time there, but they still did a really nice job. It is well organized, and it was very easy just to step into and kind of keep it rolling. So
I think it has to be academic needs based, Brady.
yep, yeah,
sure,
through teacher recommendation and
makes sense.
based on it.
Do you have any of the data? So I looked at the measures of success here, reading comprehension activities, FAST assessments, any trends that you can report on that you know of? I know you're kind of stepping into it here at this point, but
again, I'm going to look a little bit closer at the data at the end of this year. I think I'll see some more trends as we kind of move on forward. One of the things that you'll see too, though, is just kind of this little dip for students in the summer who are not encouraged just to continue to read and go through. I see it with my own daughters. You're going to see it with almost every child, but a targeted service like this can make a big difference in both reading and math for those kids as they move forward.
Yeah. It seems like super inexpensive for a really positive thing.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Brady?
Nope.
Any
No.
questions?
I think when we looked at the budget, the connecting with the targeted services through the Wright County Technical Center was the key to that. I mean, it was, we did run summer school in the past, but we didn't collect as much revenue, so we really found some revenue streams that were consistent, which I think is, in the long term, very good.
Yeah, I can tell you that the enclosure is the application that I will send in.
Okay, so this is an action item. So in order for Kevin to proceed, we would need a motion to accept his proposal and to move forward with the plan for the targeted services proposal.
I would like to make that I'd like to make the motion to accept the targeted services proposal.
Second.
That's wonderful.
All right, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, all right, very good.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is the DECA State Conference trip to Minneapolis, presented by Superintendent Durant.
There are actually two that are connected to agenda items, and I think, I'm not sure if Ryan is still here.
Oh, he stepped up.
Stepped out. I can see if he's around the corner.
The DECA program is been in Rockford very short amount of time. We've seen just phenomenal growth in the program. It started with, I'm thinking 10 students that went on to try the competitions in DECA. The next year was at 20. I think we had 40 to 60 students that are competing. They're excited, and had a chance to talk to some of the students this weekend. They were working the school store, and they just do an amazing job. And it's very much like our FFA and the DECA. We didn't have these programs here just a few short years ago, and I think they're making a huge difference and impact on the kids, to where they really feel that they're connecting their learning in some of their academic classes with courses like our business courses. So we'd recommend that we would approve the DECA State Conference trip, and I would also say the national trip, and this is going to be one of those annual experiences that our kids have a chance to be involved in, and they are actively working to get donations from our community. In fact, I think that that's one of the ways that we can have our kids connect with the community, is to go in and make presentations in front of the Chamber of Commerce, in front of the Lions, to talk about
Absolutely.
how this can really impact their lives. So
Some amazing success.
if we're lucky enough to have you approve this tonight, then I know that they're gonna be engaging in some fundraising activities right away.
I'm going to abstain from a vote on these two next pieces. However, I'll just say that, we've had lots of DECA kids over to our house as they're preparing, and in the same way that we were impressed with FFA today, I think DECA is another one of those groups that students have lots of independence, and really it's a really cool academic thing to kind of see what's important for them and them to take that lead. So I'm not going to vote either way, but I would encourage that this happens.
And the first one is approval for next year, so they're way ahead, so that we kind of got up against the timeline this year and said next year, or next time you make application, you need to get ahead of the curve, so they're well ahead of the curve.
Over a year.
And we will not be able to, in the case of the national trip, unless they get ahead of it, well, we won't know, so it happens real quickly.
Any further questions?
So based on the way I'm reading this, the costs for these things are fall entirely on the participants and
fundraising.
Fundraising, right? Yep. And I would. So how is the so a part of those fees? I'm just trying to get an understanding of how this all works here. So like for the national, that's in Tennessee. I would presume there's some level of chaperoning that happens.
Right. The district has been responsible to cover the chaperone costs.
Gotcha.
So.
Sure. Okay. That answers my questions.
I think one thing that I'll just comment on, I do appreciate seeing these a year in advance. It's great. And I also appreciate that it references the policy, the Rockford policy, that, there are very specific procedures that each leader of these groups needs to go through in order to actually get the final. So the consideration tonight from the board is around, do we agree with this? And then the policy set forth will help to guide how they approach it over the course of the next year.
Just point out for those that may not remember, the 610R field trip policy was revised and rewritten this last year to address some of these questions that both advisors and parents and board members have had.
Any further questions or discussion? Otherwise, we'll chunk these out into two separate motions. So the first one would be related to the state conference trip in Minneapolis. Do I have a motion?
Sure, motion to approve the request of the state conference trip for DECA for March 1st through 3rd, 2020.
Motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then just be noted that Kevin abstained. Motion carries. Next one would be for the DECA National trip to Tennessee. I would entertain a motion for that or further discussion.
I'll say just further discussion piece on this. One of the cool things is, even as we listen to FFA, is we're a small district, and the idea of people from our district going to nationals is a very real thing. Like, so it makes sense. It's just fun to go. We're approving nationals things, knowing we're probably going to end up going to nationals. So that's pretty cool.
Because what our track record has been very good. Thank you for saying that. All right, could I have a motion for that then?
I'll make a motion to approve the DECA National Conference trip for the next school year, 2000.
Great. Second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And then be noted that Kevin abstained. Motion carries. Next agenda item is the request for the Spanish international trip to the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador. And this looks like it's presented by Superintendent Durand.
I think we're lucky enough to have one of our teachers here.
Both.
So that, and she's going to give the report in Spanish. No.
You got it.
If you would like, we'd ask her to step up to the podium.
Absolutely, yeah, please join us.
Please.
Yep, thank you.
After sitting here all this time, you deserve
Yeah.
to come on up. Thank you.
It's all yours.
Okay. Oh, we're okay. Well, I guess I don't know. You guys have seen the proposal, right? So yeah, we went to Spain last year with EF, so we're familiar with the company. But now we would like permission to go to the Galapagos Island, and we've already had an interest meeting, which I believe a few of you were at, and we had a really great turnout to that. And we did have already 18 students have signed up for that trip, which would get us 3 free chaperones already. So, yes.
This is one of the things that I've experienced over the course of my career and have encouraged student international travel. It's life-changing when you have great teachers that are willing to host these experiences for students. The first year you went to Costa Rica.
We did.
And then Spain, and now with the Galapagos Islands. I just think these are life-changing experiences, and I would absolutely encourage the board to give this serious consideration. I know I did receive some questions about the cost, so maybe you could just talk about that just a little bit. I've worked with EF before taking students to many different countries, and EF is a really quality program. But maybe just to kind of ease the concerns about it's a $4,500 cost, and I know that your groups have been really good fundraisers, worked hard. So maybe you could explain some of the things that go with the cost.
Yeah, so there's a lot included, and I mean, obviously traveling to the Galapagos, they are islands, so we have to get to Ecuador, but then also we'll be traveling to, I think, is it 2 three of the other islands. So that's all included. The airfare, the hotels are included. Most meals are included. We'll have a tour guide with us 24/7 who knows the area. So if anything goes wrong, they're the expert. And all the activities, or I think mostly all the activities, are included. So really the students won't have to cover a lot of additional expenses besides that. And we do like to get these trips out, it would be over a year in advance so that students would hopefully have time to fundraise for that. And when they enroll, they do also get an automatic, like a GoFundMe page created for them, which is really nice. So, for Christmas, birthdays, they can request money. And then we have done in the past, we've volunteered or we've worked at the concessions, the food truck, and done some other, like the Schwann's fundraiser online. So we have provided students opportunities as well. Hold on. You had your mic on. No? Oh, your mic was on. I'm sorry. All right. So, yeah.
Curious, how much did Spain cost last year?
I believe it was $3,500.
My concern, one of the calls that I made to Paul is, my concern on this is, I grew up in a family that wouldn't have been able to afford. Now it's become, right? And so the hard thing for me is when we price things at $4,500, which is an expensive trip, and I asked Paul for perspective on things, right? How do we ensure that students can participate in the learning? And I get part of the piece of that, and I get the tension, because I'm a fan of foreign travel, especially if we go into IB and different things. My concern will be, and there's not much we can do this year, right? We've had the meetings already, we're kind of going. My thing would be, even as we look at future trips, what costs make sense, right? Because there are different places in the world that people can get a Spanish immersion experience. And I think it just takes, I think it's going to be an awesome trip, but I think there could be some wisdom in there in as well of how do we maybe make this available for more and more people. So that's my concern. I think it's going to be an awesome trip. And Paul assured me you're going with a very well-trusted organization, that this is what you do. My concern is just our population and how do we give them a broader experience.
And I think this might be not just a kid question, because they get excited and they want to do things, but this is an adult question. If we really want to have these experiences be out there for students that maybe economically can't afford it, but academically would be benefited by this, we might be able to look at setting up some special scholarships or some special ways that students can work hard and achieve in the classroom and be able to be selected. So there's this isn't something to add on top of the teachers, but it is something that I think that's a challenge to our community to try and figure out ways to maybe make this experience there for kids, because it's a little bit like paying it forward.
Yeah, for sure. No.
So speaking of academics, are there qualification for the students if they have so many years of Spanish or a certain grade level? What is it? Can you?
They have to finish Spanish 2.
Okay.
But then it's offered every 2 years, so the students can do the next one.
And having done this in several different districts, this doesn't happen if you don't have great teachers that are willing to do this. So thank you. I mean, you guys have really stepped up and been tremendous leaders, and the feedback from students is amazing, and the families. I mean, they really get a chance to see not just you in the classroom, but they really get a chance to see you as involved in this learning. And I know that at least a couple of our administrators have gone with and had a chance to see those experiences, and that's been very positive for them also, to come back and see the good work that you're doing as teachers, and also to see the quality of kids that we have that are on our trips. They represent Rockford extremely well.
And then I think you mentioned too that currently 3 chaperones are covered based on the, so that's just, again, I appreciate that this is being brought now. I think to Kevin's earlier point, a month before would have been even better. But that's all right. But I think that part of the policy of 610R is that providing a chaperone, an administrative level chaperone. And so it's nice to hear that that might, because both of you will go and then, yeah, so that's great.
It will be covered, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think last Spain trip,
Yeah.
it was a little bit late in the process, and so it was kind of one of those sort of things. So I wanted to acknowledge that, you know, that's a good thing from a district perspective as well. So. Questions? Oh, Kevin. Yep.
I'll just ask a clarified thing, and maybe recuse myself from voting again. I have 2 daughters that would qualify for this trip.
I
would too.
So how do we do that, Paul?
Well, I think that you would just acknowledge that you're in that situation and without, there's 3 of you, I think, that would be in that situation, so you wouldn't have a quorum, so you couldn't vote on it. So you just have to, you would have to just acknowledge the fact that there's that situation. I don't think it would change whether
Okay,
it's
so then just
legal.
vote in the,
But just declare your, publicly so the public knows that that's something that you've considered.
Great. Any other comments or questions?
I just wanted to kind of say, yeah, to Kevin's concern on price, that right there with you on that, and I would like to see that we do look for options for, so that more families are able to send their kids, that we do have more ways of allowing more families that option, because I know when you see that price tag, that automatically for a lot of people is just, they can't do it, but they'd love to be able to give their kids that opportunity, because it is a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's pretty incredible. Unless you're a Spanish teacher.
One of the things that in previous districts that we did, because this is a fairly lengthy trip, I think it's 12 days, is we did some journaling, had students do some journaling, and there was a academic credit that was something that they could achieve if they did some pieces of that, and I think that's another way to make sure that it's not just a trip, but it's an academic learning experience.
Yeah, through EF,
that right?
Yeah, they can get college credit through EF, or through I can't remember what college it is, but and also high school credit.
Any other comments?
Can I make the comment that I think a scholarship for students would be awesome?
Yeah, you sure can. Yeah, absolutely.
Did I make that comment?
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, and I would echo too, just the thoughts around, doing everything we can to make these, because I hear, Paul talk about how important this is for kids to do it and in these formative years of their life, and for some kids it would certainly price them out of that experience. So amazing opportunity, agree, once in a lifetime, and yeah, same things on the price tag too. So, yep. All right, with that, any further comments, questions, concerns? Brady?
So just one quick question. Is this like, do you get bids from from a variety of companies, or do you just, EF being a trusted vendor, you just go?
Good question.
EF does the majority of the school trips. You can always find something that's cheaper, but when you're taking kids internationally, I think that it's better to make sure that you've got a comfort level with them. I know that I've traveled all through Europe with student trips. Took a group of students to Japan and traveled to China, and when you are in a foreign country, you really want to make sure that they provide some of the best tour guides, and they are very, very knowledgeable of what you're looking at, and so the whole time they're teaching you, and so you could get somebody that would get you to the places, but they wouldn't have the background, or they wouldn't know the local history, or it wouldn't be the
full
same.
educational experience.
And with this group, if I remember correctly from the meeting, there will be other schools that are with our group, correct, most of the
Yes.
time?
It's
Yes.
yes, more than likely.
Okay,
Yes.
depending on how many.
Unless
our
we were
spots
to-
filled so fast, we
yeah.
actually opened up more spots for the trip. So
There's a potential it could be only Rockford.
it could just be us on
At this
our bus
point.
because there were so many people that wanted to go. We didn't want to cut off the opportunity within 12 hours. So
That happened pretty quick.
Yeah.
This could be a shock to some grandparents more than parents, because I know that there's a lot of grandparents that are very much interested in providing support for these kind of trips for their kids or grandkids. So giving them time is also very important.
So I believe I need to make known that I have 2 children that could take this trip possibly.
And I have one child that would qualify for this trip as well. This is Amy.
And I
Already
have one
declared.
too.
Mhm.
It's cheaper if you send them one way. That's tempting.
Any further discussion? So with that, this is an action item, so we would need a motion to accept or to allow them to start really the process of preparing and planning for this trip to the Galapagos Islands.
Motion to approve the request for the trip to the Galapagos Islands.
I'll second.
All right, I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Great work.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here too tonight to represent the trip. Appreciate it. Next agenda item is district staffing considerations presented by Superintendent Durant.
On page 60 of your board packet, you'll see that there are a couple of positions that are listed. The 2018-19 school year, this current school year, you've already taken action on one custodial position and one media paraprofessional position, which has allowed us to open the media centers up again. If you remember, we had made a cut in that paraprofessional position, which caused a rotation, which meant that some of the libraries would be closed part of the day. And so now with that additional position, the libraries are back open. I've received very positive feedback from parents and from staff members saying that this was a good position to return. For the 2019-20, you've already taken action on a high school social studies addition, teaching position, which will help us to begin the International Baccalaureate Middle Years program at the high school. So if you turn to page 61, and it may be just a little bit confusing, but you can see that the top 2 positions, the custodial position and the media paraprofessional, then there are a number of positions under high school secretaries, elementary secretaries, middle school secretaries, district office, clerical support. These were all positions that over the years were cut back from full-time positions to being 7-hour positions, so we helped balance the budget on the backs of some of our employees, and it just seems the right thing to do to return those employees back to full-time positions. They were there to support the district when there was a need to make reductions in the budgets, and now that there's a successful passage of the levy, I think that that's an important thing to do, is to return that. If you do know that if you go to the high school offices, you'll see that the offices are closed immediately at the end of school, and that's a time then people are always looking, parents and community members are always trying to connect with the school people, but due to the cuts, we had to close those offices. I think that would be a good start to return those positions to full-time positions. You can see that the dollar amounts that there are both estimated costs, the estimated benefits, and the totals The 2019-20 editions that are below that, these are not positions right now that we're gonna recommend except for the second line. These are sheriff's police liaisons. Board has asked that I go back to Hennepin County and Wright County and negotiate contracts to provide sheriff's liaisons from Hennepin and Wright County. I met with both the sheriffs, and both of the sheriffs are new sheriffs, and I really felt very, very positive willingness to collaborate with the school district. And Hennepin County is going to be doing some specialized training in our schools for their select units. And Wright County has, well, I think Rockford is the only school that doesn't have a liaison in their school district. And it's a challenge for us because being between Wright and Hennepin counties, there's jurisdiction and there's the ability to work across those lines. So when the Hennepin County, previously when we had the Hennepin County Sheriff, they raised the cost of running that liaison program to the point where it just costed itself out of our ability to actually have the positions. So right now, we will be able to get a position from Wright County and a position in Hennepin County, so there'll be two liaisons that'll be able to work across the county lines to work with each other. They can, let's say there's one at the middle school and one at the high school and elementary, they can come over and work with each other because we have Hennepin County kids at the middle school and we have Wright County kids that are at the high school and the elementary, so that's that jurisdictional issues that's always been a challenge. So my recommendation, and the recommendation of the administration, would be to return these positions of clerical support back to 8 hours from 7, and to authorize the district to enter into relationship with both Hennepin and Wright County Sheriff's Department. A little bit of clarification. The Hennepin County Sheriff has agreed to $40,000 for this position, but they want it to be a 3-year commitment that we do it each of 3 years. Wright County has a formula that they've been working in, I think in all of their communities, they have this formula that they apply, and the maximum that it could cost us would be between $40,000 to $42,000, depending upon which of the sheriff's deputies and what their seniority is within the department. Theirs is year to year, so there's a little bit of difference. I tried to see if I could get them to both work off the same contract. That wasn't going to happen. Just they were. That was going to take too long to make that work out. But I'm thrilled that there is a willingness on the part of the sheriff's department and the counties to step up and partner with us. I didn't necessarily, over the last several years, feel that we had that problem resolved, and I think with these new positions, I think it'll send a loud and clear message to our community that safety and security of our students, our community members, and our staff is important, and we're going to be able to work very collaboratively with these new liaison officers.
Kevin?
Just clarity, I know we've talked about this, Paul, already. If you look at the high school, middle school, elementary secretaries, you see one number. If you look at the DO department office, district office, sorry,
Yep.
and you want to share why that is?
Sure, it's because some of them are 9-month employees and some of them are full-year employees. And the liaison positions would be the student contact days. That's when they would have the liaison officers here, and that opens it up so that they could cover summer vacations in the department, and so that's a good thing for the sheriff to have that ability to be flexible on the summer hours for vacations of other sheriff's deputies.
Brady.
So it's basically 16 hours per day then for each school day for the sheriff's liaison. Okay. And what was the kind of, how did you guys arrive at the 2 positions, so the 16 hours versus other options? Why is that the recommendation?
Well, first of all, it's because they dropped the rate so far that it just seemed like it made the most sense to be efficiently using that.
I think our first number was over 132 that we were guessing.
Yes. So we took what the last liaison was, at one point it was 55, and then it even went even higher than that, to the point where our school levy wouldn't even cover the position. I was down at the Capitol today, and it looks as if the school levy that we might tap is going to adjust from $36 per pupil to $54 per pupil. So it looks like there's going to be additional revenues that come in that can assist us in covering the cost of these positions. I think it's the right thing to do, quite honestly. We have plenty of issues that I think hit all of our buildings, and having that level of support would be really, really important.
Jessica, how does this affect staffing at any of our buildings?
Well, everything you spend money on affects staffing. So if we don't have liaison officers, it frees you up that $80,000 to spend it on staffing in other ways. But if you look at the projections that we put together, we've been very conservative, picking 1% state aid increase from the legislature. If you receive any more than 1%, then that adjusts. We also have been very conservative by holding the enrollment flat. If we receive more enrollment, or if we received a higher percentage from the legislature, or it changes in any of the levies, then there's more flexibility there. Obviously, anytime you see red, that means that that's not the direction you want it to go. But I think that at least these initial positions would be ones that I would strongly recommend. We've received the most feedback on the liaison officers over the last several years, and I think that that's something just, I mean, you hate to spend money on that, but you also, it's really important to, I think, develop those relationships.
I guess, does it affect any current positions at, like, for instance, our high school?
No.
Okay.
And we'll bring back this 1920 editions to have conversations about that. I think that there was a couple of questions that I received, well, you know, what about teaching positions and so on? And those are enrollment driven and registration driven, so it's a little bit different. Those happen every spring also. These normally wouldn't be something we'd be bringing you. It's just when you have cuts that have been made over the course of years, and people look at that and say, well, is there going to be some rebuilding of some of the positions that were cut over the years? That'll be a decision you'll be making in a future month. But I wanted to make sure that you had the information in front of you.
I'll say we've been talking about this spot for a while, right? We recognize there's some gap in the safety security position, not necessarily that our students are at risk, but just that piece there. And we've kind of done some different things. And Paul, I want to say thank you for the effort that you did. I remember when I first heard you talk about what Wright County would be, and then we thought, well, there's no way Hennepin would be able to do that. And then to hear both of them and right around that $40,000 mark is pretty impressive. So thank you for that. And sometimes I think going slow is the right way to do things. So to me, as we look at our, the passing of the levy and I just think that that's one of the things that we'd be good stewards of that to put into that liaison position.
I think that is one of the things that you hear from community members. What did we get for the levy that was passed? And I think as a board, you know that it was a pretty flat status quo levy. We weren't going to be getting a lot, But there are some things that I think we can do, and one of them with the liaison is important. And I will tell you that our clerical staff is the backbone of any school district. You've got some just tremendous, hardworking people, but you don't want to balance the budget on the back of those staff members. So this is a recommendation. If there's any thanks at all, I would thank both the new sheriffs, the Hennepin County Sheriff and the Wright County Sheriff. Really were willing to be creative and figure out ways how to make this happen. And I think that if any of you were sitting there having those conversations with them, you'd appreciate the level of dedication that they came forward with. I heard the Wright County Sheriff speak at the Chamber of Commerce for the Rockford Greenfield Chamber of Commerce, and he did an amazing job, and he pointed out the fact that we were willing to work with him. I think that's a nice step forward.
No, I think it's great.
And then maybe just to help all of us, because we haven't had this sort of a role for, I don't know, a while, right? How many years has it been, Paul, since we even had the part-time sort of
I think
role?
It's been maybe 6 years.
Yeah. So could you help? I think it's great. I think it's what we also heard from the community, and wanting to make sure that we had a mechanism in place to ensure the safety, which the safety is in the building, and it's also getting to know kids about what's going on outside of the building too, right? And helping them be successful in life and all of those sort of things. How would you imagine, or how does this sort of a liaison type of a role integrate in with our existing administrative or staff to support kind of what's going on and kind of augment that? Does that question kind of make sense? How does that all come together?
There's some written guidelines that all will have to follow. They're not going to be employees of the school district. They have to follow what the responsibilities are of a law enforcement officer, not so that they have probable cause, and the school district has reasonable suspicion as a litmus test for determining whether student can be disciplined in the school by school rules, and that might not be illegal, or it might be something that's illegal. The training of the liaison officers in Wright County is spectacular. They have a large group of liaisons, and they've got a Sergeant Leander that's assigned to training and working with. He's come out to the school and done some training for our staff. So Wright County will be very, very good transition right away. In Hennepin County, there's more police departments in Hennepin County, so oftentimes the liaisons come from the police department. So this was an extra above and beyond that the Wright County Sheriff did this for us, because there's very few liaisons. So they're going to have the chance to work together across county lines, because if a Wright County liaison wants to enforce a law and it's on a Hennepin County student, they have to hand it off to somebody with a different jurisdiction. And as you learn the rules, for example, if a juvenile is charged in Hennepin County, sometimes if the offense happens in Hennepin County, but they're a Wright County resident, then they change the jurisdiction back over to Wright County. So there's a lot of that's going on. That's why this is so unique, because most districts would never have to be in this situation, because we have that river that runs down through the middle of the district, and half of our students are on one side and half are on the other side.
Great. Does anyone have any more questions?
I think if you did make a motion, I'd probably make it for the top one first, and then I'd do the liaison second, so that you be on record for that.
So I will just make one more comment. I do appreciate how you've kind of put forward this big picture list of like all of the possible things, and then, Kevin, I appreciate what you said about it allows us to kind of go slow and start to really see the needs of the district and make some decisions, but do them in way that makes sense, right? And like taking the time to build the relationships with the sheriff's offices and all of those sort of things and just kind of pace it out. So I appreciate being able to see all of these things and then chunking it out as a board as we need to help authorize these things and have conversations around them, to be quite frank.
Can I just point out
Go
one
ahead.
other thing down there, and this is one that I think Brady called me and asked about, this communications piece. This is if you hired somebody that was an employee of the district and you had benefits. There's been a discussion of board members, that said, have we looked at consulting, have we looked at hiring somebody as a service, and we wouldn't be necessarily having to pay the benefits then? And the answer is yes, we're looking at those things and we'll bring it to you and try to see if we can and have some feedback from board members on what's the best way to stretch the resources. But again, this is just kind of one way to look at it. There's other ways to look at the same thing, so we will bring that to you.
Any other discussion? Otherwise, I would take a motion related to the first section of the requested additions by the administrative team, which is the really making whole or bringing 8 positions back to full-time capacity in our administrative staff.
With the additional custodial position.
No,
That's already been done.
That's been done.
Yep. So it's just the
It's not administrative, it's clerical.
Clerical.
Yep. Oh, sorry, clerical positions.
I can make a motion to approve the additions of the clerical positions as stated.
And I will second hers motion.
All right, so I have a motion and a second to accept the recommendation from the administrative staff to make 8 clerical positions back up to full-time capacity. Any further discussion? With that, I'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
I would like to just publicly thank those 8 people who, on the backs of their family budgets, helped the district to balance the budget. 6 of them are 284 employees as far as the 284 union. And I will say that of all of the 8 people that had their positions reduced, I did not have one person complain, one person say that it wasn't something that they would do. They readily stepped up. And even though it was difficult, they stepped up and supported the district. And I just want to give my thanks to them for that, because I know that sometimes it is the hardest thing in the world to do is to balance the backs of the budget on the backs of your employees. And so thank you to those employees.
Thank you, Paul. Next request from the administrative team is for that of a police liaison role that would be in service to Hennepin and Wright County students. So it would be 2 positions, full-time during student contact hours at the negotiated rate that Superintendent Durant has presented to us this evening. With that, I would take, if there's any further discussion, otherwise I would take a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the sheriff liaison positions as stated.
Immediately, right? Is that what we
Immediately,
want?
yeah.
It's not immediately.
I mean,
No,
but
it's for the next
starting-
school year.
Next school year.
But yeah, starting the next school, not the, sorry, I didn't mean the 1920 piece there. The 1920s, gotcha.
So I have a motion. Do I
I'll
have
make a second.
All right, any further discussion? Okay. All right, with that, I would take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? With that, motion carries for the district to enter into conversations about those police liaison positions. Thank you.
This is the 1819, this is just getting we'll talk right now.
So like,
Um,
we could do next week.
Yeah, we could take
Whenever,
it.
whenever it makes sense.
Well, we can do that right now. Yeah, probably right now. I have a
The number 8.
Yep, and then Beth is going to be taking off, so we'll be down to a quorum of 4. We're going to adjourn for about a 5-minute recess. See you. Are we back on?
Oh,
All right. We'll call the meeting back into session. It is 9:02. And with that, our next agenda item is the Facilities, Maintenance, Buildings, and Grounds Report. Jim, would you like to come to the podium, please?
She looks very excited.
I know that Jim requested to be one of the last presenters of the night, and it's not always going to be this way, Jim.
Actually, I didn't. I was going to talk to Kathy about being moved up to the front because I see all my friends left. So I lost all my support.
Jim, at some point, will want to explain to you the newspaper article about the aliens.
I read that today.
Did you read that?
I did.
It's out on the history page of Rockford.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to explain just quickly what that was?
That was a new one yesterday that my brother brought to my attention. That he just happened to be listening, or he was on Facebook page and he went on the Rockford history. And there's an article about my dad and his younger brother. My dad, I think, was 10, and his younger brother was 5.5. And the farm that they lived on at that time was directly across where the new high school is. Wayzata High School is. And they supposedly saw a UFO. And to the extent of where the U.S. Army sent people out there to talk to them.
Oh, wow.
And like my brother said, I called my dad and said, for 57 years you failed to tell me and my brother that this article took place? And my dad says, I was afraid to tell anybody for your safety. And I didn't believe it existed, so my brother sent me the article. So it's a new one to me. So, yeah, if you want to know someone famous, you get to know them.
So Jim is on to talk about the facilities maintenance and some of the pieces of the puzzle here. If you see on the page 64, and I'll try to ask Jim some questions so we can kind of navigate this. As far as the long-term facilities maintenance budget, there's a requirement by the Department of Education that you put a 10-year plan together. We're in the process of working that 10-year plan out, doing quotes, doing some bids, trying to make sure that we get our arms around what the numbers are. That will come to the board in June. It always comes to the board in the June meeting, and then it's reported to the Department of Ed. And it doesn't mean that you are locked into that plan. It's just that you need to support a plan, put it together. On page 64, you'll see that there's a long-term facilities maintenance, and this has already been approved 2018-19. This has been approved by the previous board for these various projects. So Jim, do you want to just talk about this year's projects that you're working on?
It's the bottom one, 2018-2019.
Yep.
So I'm working with a company to look at replacing our lighting, parking lot lighting in the RCC parking lot, high school parking lot, and then all the wall packs, which is the security small lights that are on the building. Like on the RCC, my understanding is we've had some neighbor complaints that they're so bright that we shut them off at night, so we lose that security. But with the new lighting that we can install, we can have it directly shoot down the wall, where currently they shoot out, the lighting shoots towards the neighborhood. These would kind of splash the walls and give us that security at night. And that's something I think we need to look into, is get that back. With all the lighting replacements, the reason we're replacing is, one is obviously energy efficient, but two is when you get to the age of the lighting, you start running into problems with expensive ballasts, you can't find the fixtures anymore. So they've run their, long-term facility talks a lot about life cycle, and they're past their life cycle. So I'm working with a company, and I'll work with another company to get the best pricing, the best quotes, and try to get that, we have to get that done in completed build before June 30th. One thing I know Superintendent Durand has requested that any lights that we do replace match the same color, so you don't have like different colors and it's like Christmas trees out there, and I agree, it needs to be standardized, and I'd prefer to standardize it. That way we just have the same fixtures.
And then we also would have interchangeable bulbs, which is, then you don't have to have a big inventory of multiple bulbs.
The locks at the middle school, they're just starting to wear out. The keys are not working. We're constantly cutting keys. Cylinders are wearing out, so we got to replace the cylinders. I think offhand, it's like 12 or 14 cylinders, so it's not that big a deal. The tech doors, the tech office doors, they're pretty beat up. You know, they bring in a lot of stuff back and forth in their wood doors, so they're really busted up pretty good. And I'd like to put on metal doors in there. I talked to John a little bit about it, and we'll paint them up nice to match the doors, and we'll put metal doors on there. We need to do some changes in exiting and fire for the media center. If we're adding technology in the future to here, maybe, possibly.
Let me just explain that. The room right next door is going to be a room that we would distribute technology out of if we move towards student one-to-one or any kind of a program that we have student computers. We would put a technician over here and have it be out of that tech office there where you'd have if somebody had an issue with a computer, they'd go to the tech office. We did go to a kind of a call center, which has been successful, but if you're going to go to a more robust program at the secondary level, you got to have a technician over here. So we're looking at that. And I think that would be to replace a window and put a door in, so we'd have to get ahead of.
Yeah, in theory, if the fire marshal really wanted to crack down on, with that volume of space in the media center, you need 2 exits. But they prefer you not exiting into one room and to get into another room, to get out of another room. They prefer you to get exiting right into a hallway. So we're kind of thinking ahead a little bit and planning ahead before we get nicked on it with the fire marshal or fire inspector, that with the volume, if we get a volume of kids or staff or community event in the media center, we have a set of double doors besides the second set we have in there. So thinking ahead a little bit. So that's the install of the fire exit doors and stuff. That's this year. And then you guys would have to approve some of the things that I'm talking about next year come later in the next couple months. But.
So the top section has a number of 2019-20, which would take place after July 1st. If you see the first one, and Jim can talk about all the details on it, but we did not strip the floor in the gym because of the time and the cost associated with this, knowing that we had to sand and repaint the gym floor. And so Jim's worked with a couple of contractors to get some good pricing on that. The problem with it is that you won't approve that budget until June, but we have to get on the work schedule for the company to come out and do the work. So we had to bring this piece a little early.
Yeah, so as we do, so we didn't scrub and recoat floors, gym floors last year, and you know that our facilities get used. And if you look at them now, they look pretty well worn. And then the main gym at the high school has to have a new emblem put on it, if you're aware of that, I think from the past. So we need to take that off and completely sand down the floor to remove all the paint and stuff. And we're gonna add we've had a couple different companies look at it. With one of the companies, We're gonna add a little different colors to it, like staining and stuff to it. You'll see some of the new basketball courts that have a little bit darker color in the shooting lanes and stained wood on the outside and stuff. It's gonna look pretty nice once it's complete. But with those top three things, I have to get those on the schedule soon. And in fact, I've got them on the schedule, hoping for board approval, and I can always have to cancel them. But if I waited till May or June, we wouldn't get it done this year. Because when I contacted them, finally contacted the main, two different people are doing the main sanding, and the other company's doing the elementary and the middle school. The main contractor for the high school is filling up pretty fast. So I got him actually on the schedule to start the week of July 1st. So he will be here all week. And again, it's easier to cancel than it is to get it and say, yeah, board approved it June 20th. Can I get you in? Ain't gonna happen, because they'll fill up. And then we got some windows that we've got to finish up at the elementary school that have been leaking. I think that's been a 3-year project or a 4-year project.
Oh, for sure.
This should finish that wing and finish most of our windows that are leaking at the middle school.
At the elementary, you mean?
I mean, at the elementary school. At the middle school, if you've been up on the asphalt where the kids play on their playground, play basketball and stuff, that asphalt is deteriorated so bad that the aggregate, the rocks in it are showing, and with a limited area of space for them to have a playground, I mean, you're asking for some very bad injuries with knees and stuff like that. So I want to look at replacing that, just tearing that out and replacing that and making a nice play area for them to play on. Holding pond back here. I don't know if you're aware, below the stadium there's a little holding pond, a little drainage ditch. That is forever filling up. Talking to one of our construction consultants, the problem we have in the soils up there is it's sandy, and it's a wet sand, so it's always letting out water. And I can show you a quick picture that this was taken last year of how much water. It was pretty close to the building, and it's something that's got to get fixed. I haven't gotten the okay from the Minnesota Department of Ed if it's LTFM funds or not, but it's full of water.
It was nice of you to put those kayaks there.
Yeah, that's.
Well, you know.
That's one of our custodians. But where we park, where the staff park, is all full of, for our staff to park back by the receiving area. It's like got to be like 2 feet from the building.
And that's also.
It actually did get into our storage garage area. So I'm looking at 2 different options. I'm thinking about going the cheaper route of just looking at digging out like maybe 6 or 7 dump truck loads of dirt out of that and making it a holding pond. I had another quote that would make that, dig that out and then run a drain from there over to the storm sewer, but that's quite a bit of money. And I think our holding pond direction is the best bet.
We worked with Wright County to put rain gardens at the middle school. We did work with the school forest over by on the Hennepin County side. I'm not sure of what is available for resources for possible rain garden and maybe some support from the county. We're still looking into that.
Okay.
And then
Spring will be fun.
and lastly is work on the lighting, LED lighting on Reams next year and try to finish up the rest of the district, including the bus garage, for our parking lot lights and just get them to all LED and save some funding and stuff, some energy, is our long-term goal.
One other thing that's not on here, but since this is an informational piece, I wanted you to be aware of. Since we brought a teacher over from the middle school in social studies to be a part of the IB program, we need to add a classroom. And so Jim and I were talking about where could we add a classroom. There's down hallway number 2 in the high school, there's 2 kind of alcove areas that are both classroom sized. And Jim has done this before, either was it Eden Prairie or Wayzata, maybe both of them.
Mostly Wayzata, we did all the construction work.
So he said that his staff could do the construction work. We would need to order a door frame and a door, and that's a fairly long lead time item, so we'd have to do that within probably the next couple of weeks here in order to get it so we could construct that classroom. I think the dollar amount you had estimated was about $8,000 to do a classroom, which is significantly better than if you had to go outside to do that. So, is that correct?
Yep. So that's just kind of a brief thing of what we're doing currently. Luckily, with all the rain and the snow we've had, that's a facilities nightmare, because I'm surprised we haven't had more leaks. I talked to many of my other directors and stuff, and they even have new roofs that are still, that leak. And so, cross your fingers, snow melts slowly and gets off the roofs, and we're doing pretty good. So we're not having too major of an issue.
I think you should know the dedication of Jim and his crew. They're short-staffed, and they've been really working hard to get snow moved. We've got tournaments. They've been keeping the sidewalks cleared. They've kept the parking lots cleared. They've moved and blown snow. Jim made some recommendations on some change out of some of the equipment so that we could actually blade it off and we could blow the snow so that we wouldn't have it pile up quite so high, and just different ways to approach it. It's either good or bad, but Jim knows how to drive all this equipment, and so he's been in there working really hard to do this, and I think coming up with different suggestions of how we can maximize his short staff and how they can use the equipment to really make. But the other day when there was a big flood, he's down in a manhole, soaked, trying to figure out how to get the water to release, which he did. This is real dedication. I think we're really lucky to have a great guy like Jim to be able to take care of some of these issues, and he's always trying to find a way to creatively do the right thing and do it cost effectively. So I really have a lot of respect and appreciation for the dedication. I think he leads by example, which I'm really impressed by.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, just a brief thing. I had the ability to work for two different directors, with 2 different personalities, or not different personalities, but management styles. And the one director said, no matter what, school's got to open. It's got to open up tomorrow morning, it's got to open up Monday morning, it's got to open up the day after Labor Day. And that kind of hit home is, when I come around the corner, we're moving snow on a Sunday morning, and it's like Sarah and the elementary school, it's like, we got to get school open, we got to figure it out. And the only person that can close it is the superintendent or the governor, and so we just got to do whatever it takes. And I tell you, I just shout out to a couple of my maintenance guys. They just stood there right by me, whatever it took to get the job done, and we got it done. And so we have some very dedicated buildings and grounds people, very dedicated.
One of the things that, give you just an example, we had so much snow that we really were running out of places for them to put the snow. And the cost of hauling the snow away and blowing it so that you had more parking lot space. Was it $6,000?
Just for one time.
And we just said that's just unreasonable. So Jim went to work and through his network and his connections found some used equipment that was in pretty good shape and was reasonably priced. And now instead of having to pay to have snow removed, there's a way for us to kind of handle it and move it internally. If you don't have the right equipment, you can't do it, but Jim really worked hard to find that, and I think had a couple of different vendors that he was working against each other to get it done.
Yeah, it was, you know, that was the first time they wanted to move it, and I think we probably would have had to move it 2 or 3 more other times. So we would have been talking, you know, $20,000 to move the snow, and I'm more of a person that's like renting a house or renting an apartment. It's just like giving that money away where if we can utilize resources, and if it costs, you know, you spend $4,000 to buy a snowblower to do this for the future too, we're way money ahead. Doesn't matter how much money a school district has, if you have a lot or less. My goal is to always try to do it the most efficient, cost-effective way. That's my goal. And my goal is to make sure the facilities are ready for teaching and learning every day so they can do their jobs. So that's what I strive for. Like Paul says, sleep's overrated.
Has been a busy winter.
Yes.
So, any questions?
No.
I do want to thank you for getting me a buildings and grounds supervisor. That's very nice of Melissa to step up for me and advocate for me to get a supervisor. Now I got assistant.
Okay.
So I do have a question, Paul, you inkled to it. What is your plan for getting our fields ready for spring? With all the snow. I'm so curious.
He did meet with RA representatives and the coaches.
Yep, I met with Ra. Me and Melissa met with Ra a week ago Friday, and they wanted to actually snow blow their field off, and it's like, no. And so I finally agreed. They wanted to do it before this heavy rain came this last week, and the ground was still frozen, and I just said, okay, we'll give it a try, but I'm going to be on the premises, and if I say stop, we're stopping, because first of all, I got to say, there are fields, we got to protect them, and I can't have a big money to fix the fields. I don't have a budget to do that, so they had to commit to repair the fields if they damaged them. And then so he got the infield done, and he was blowing so much snow, he was trying to get it out to the outfield that he packed it so much into the outfield, he couldn't move it anymore. So Melissa asked me this morning, track wants to get out. She also has a rental that wants to use it. So we're gonna keep an eye on it this week. I may take one of my good maintenance guys up on the field and do some testing. But we're gonna see what this 50-degree weather does and a little bit of rain towards the end of the week. But at the worst case scenarios, we'd probably do a little bit of opening with some snow blowing, maybe a path here and there, and that'll then just take it out. Yeah. So it's getting close. It's the drifts that are packed in hard that are not melting. But I'm surprised it went as fast as it did. But we'll get it done.
Okay, any questions? No? So this was a non-action, just an update, so I really appreciate that, bringing this kind of forward, giving us an update on what you've been up to and what you're gonna need from us, and kind of foreshadowing what you'll bring to us in May for your long-term facilities budget.
Yeah, we'll have to have a long-term facilities approval and stuff like that. So that'll be coming up.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We don't have to do anything at this time about the sand and repainting of the high school gym, or do we need to do that?
No.
No,
No,
we're good.
because that won't be, you guys won't approve that until
Okay.
next year's
And
budget?
it's already scheduled.
Yeah,
and you can always
I'm just
cancel it.
information
Okay.
that I schedule it because
Right.
I had to, so you don't have to approve it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we didn't
Just wanna
really
make
even
sure.
need to bring it here, but we just thought that
Yeah.
it would be helpful
Well,
for
it's
you to
good
know
to
that.
get it on our radar that we're
Yeah,
aware
Put a
of it.
deposit down
And-
for something like that?
What's that?
Do you have to put a deposit down just to hold
No.
the workers?
No, I asked, do you need a PO or anything like that? And I worked with Cher and stuff to see how early we can cut POs for next year. And it's like April or May, she said, but
And what's after
I've worked-
you guys pass this?
I've worked
Right.
with these companies before in the past, so, they're pretty good. They said, no, we're good to go, we'll put you on the schedule. So if for some reason you don't, they would understand.
Mhm.
So,
It's probably similar to many districts. Go ahead, it's just.
And the reason for repainting the high school gym because of the logo is we have a copyright issue,
It's a
correct?
trademarked logo for a college that we
That
don't
was
own the
put there
trademark.
at one time
was
and,
put there probably 10, 12 years ago.
right, so that needs to be,
Needs to be
Changed.
corrected.
yeah.
and speaking of that, talking to this vendor that's gonna do the sanding and recoating and the new emblem and stuff, he said, we're not the only ones. He said,
It's everywhere.
it comes up all the time, is there'll be somebody that, that sees this logo, looks up a college and they find it and they just have to come in and sand the floors. And it might be a college way out east.
Right.
It has no effect on us or another school, high school, but he has to do it all the time.
So we noticed this, I think it was my second year, and then we corrected it before we put the turf field in.
Okay.
So the correct logo is in the center of the turf field.
So, yeah, it's nothing new, it happens too often. But it'll look nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you, Jim.
All right,
And
next.
if you ever want a tour, remember, look me up. I'll give you a tour of the back of the boiler rooms and all that stuff.
Thank you. All right, next agenda item. Last month, Superintendent Duran presented the transportation contractor. It might have been Cher. I can't remember off the top of my head. But anyway, we have that back for an action item tonight. Anything else you want to add to that, Paul?
No, that's pretty self-explanatory.
So with that, I would take any conversation, discussion, and if no discussion, a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 4.0 transportation amended contract.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right, next agenda item is the first reading of MSBA approved policy revisions. Policy 601, 604, 613R, 618, 504, 619, and 802 that were presented in our board packet. Paul, is there anything you want to add to this first reading discussion?
No.
Any discussion for the group? Any questions as you were looking at them?
Nope.
All right, again, go ahead, Brady.
So the policy on policies. I know you've talked about this before, but given my relative newness to the board is to read, review, ask questions once they get on the agenda, and then make a motion on them at the following meeting, so we can expect to see these in our next meeting. Okay.
Yep, that is true, and there are instances where a policy might need more expedited, approval, and then we have that conversation, but standard practice, or if all of the changes are 100% non-substances, like maybe like a little teeny tweak here and a tweak there, but nothing major, then, technically they could be approved in one sitting, but our traditional, is first read, second read, that's
Gotcha.
that's in concordance with how we do it at Northwest Suburban as well, just to get them out there. And I think, Jessica, that's been your experience in Musego too.
Mhm.
So pretty
We-
traditional way.
We have, the Minnesota School Boards Association has a policy review procedure, and we pay for that service, and so then they go back and cross-check against Minnesota statutes and to see if there's any changes in the laws. It's to our advantage to make sure that the policies are as current as we could possibly make it, and that's one of the things that we try to rotate policies at least every couple of years to get them through. And if there's significant changes in the legislation, then legislation takes priority over policy
Right.
anyways. But we try to make sure that it's current as we can possibly be. And then the R policies are all Rockford policies only, so then we have the responsibility to have those legally verified if there's a need to do that. We don't have the MSBA service doesn't do that of local policies.
I think, and one of the points of doing a first read, second read is it gets it out there too, so that it's visible to the community. And I think, as Paul stated, we generally follow a standard set policy, so there's not much, if it's a set MSBA policy, we don't usually modify it much, because then it needs to go into an R policy, which becomes different, right, to manage. But again, this is, we do a first read, second read, gives a chance. The other nice thing that it does is it gives everybody a chance to really read the policy and understand it too. So anyway.
On page 104, there's another example of a first read policy. You did have some conversations about this at your board work session. This is the credit for learning, and if you remember, I think it's on page 109, it's the art of problem solving weighted grade discussion. I'll just say that was a fairly hard to follow conversation, not because it wasn't good conversation, it's just that when you're in a work session, you can't reach closure because you don't vote on anything. So I think that it was very helpful that the board chair directed the administrative team to work on putting together what they believed was the best policy, and even then it might be up for discussion when it comes back as a second reading. I did send out something that I hoped would clarify in response to some of your questions that were coming in. But again, when you have 2-3 sidebar conversations going on at the same time, it's a little hard to try and figure out what's the exact line of discussion that's the priority. But I think we got pretty close to that. So please take an extra look at page 109, and if there's anything that you want to have suggested that be modified or adjusted before next meeting, get to me so we can work on that, or I'll share it with the high school principal and director of teaching and learning, because they're the ones that really did the most of the work on that. But I think it's important that we take your feedback on that.
Great, thank you. And again, the policy, so the first chunk is kind of the MSBA policies. The second one that Paul just presented is a R policy. And again, just to further clarify that, that's a Rockford policy. And so thanks, Paul, for pointing out that area of very special attention that we should be paying to the area that's red in the policy, and just validate that it makes sense. And again, any questions would be great to ask between now and the next board meeting.
May I ask a question now?
Yes.
On page, just around contracts, I'm on page 101, and there seems to be a substantial jump from 50, then it was revised to 100, now 175.
And these are legislative changes.
Is that what that is? That's what I was asking, what that was. I didn't know if it's MSBA was recommending that or that's legislative.
Any other questions at this time? Okay, again, all of those policies will come back for a second read at the next board meeting, of which we would then intend to take action. All right, next agenda item, or next agenda chunk, superintendent updates and announcements. Then, I'll turn it over to you. Well, do you want to read these? Well, the next, or do you want me to read them? The regular meeting of the Board of Education is Monday, April 15th, 6:30 p.m., Heritage Room, High School. Work session is Monday, May 6th, 6:30 p.m., Heritage Room at the high school. And then move on to member updates.
All right.
Jessica.
I need to find mine. All right, so we had the advisory board committee meeting that we all attended. And I also attended officers training. I was there with Eric, actually. A C-Day at the Capitol as well, which was, it's a wonderful experience. And good to get our voice heard down there. Of course, there was a choir concert in there that we were able to attend. Curriculum night, felt that was a real success. Nice to talk with teachers in different areas and where they're at and their excitement for things changing at the high school. Following that was the band trip meeting. Excited, I'll be heading off to New York at the end of this week with the band and choir. So that will be fun to share with all of you. Watching our kids perform, they're supposed to be performing at the United Nations. So that should be really cool. They have a couple other performances as well, but I think that one's going to be pretty neat. Pretty excited to see that. We had our work session, Masiko meeting, and on Friday I attended the continuing education meeting. Friday morning. I did want to ask, Brady and I are not able to attend Masiko meeting next Tuesday night. Not sure if either of you would like to attend that and just kind of see what it's all about. I can let Janelle know if one of you would like to attend that.
It's Tuesday the 26th.
Mm-hmm. It's at 7 o'clock in Howard Lake. And it's okay if no one's there for a meeting, that's fine, that happens. So, but as far as I can see, that is my report.
I know early on Beth had also offered to be a third.
For
Didn't she,
Masiko?
Or maybe she didn't want to.
I think it's too close.
Too close.
For her.
All right.
So.
Great. Very good. Kevin.
I this weekend was the community expo, and I was out of town, so I missed the community expo. So I'd love to get a piece on that, and then we attended our and what is that? AMSD meeting up in on the northeastern side of the cities, which was, it was actually really great to hear. It was a very timely conversation around I'm trying to think, not alternative learning days. What did they call them? But rather than canceling school, they had a
computers, technology.
Yeah, but they called it
digital days.
No, they called it something different.
But the idea is, and this is really I think a fantastic thing that we're going to have to talk about, how we do get more and more technology into our students' hands, and what do we need to do with that? Because this year students would have missed, like they went to miss school. We could have had some opportunities for them to be able to do school from home and engage in an active learning day. I forget what it was called. It was kind of funny. But they had 3-4 different people talk about how they're doing that in their schools. We also were able to talk to a legislative, or hear from some of the stuff that's going on in the legislative area around education, and specifically around early education. They talked a lot about early education in that spot. But the piece for me was really, I know there's an opportunity. So just my work experience right now, KW is a real estate company, right? But we have made the shift to be a technology company, because if you look at everything, we're entering a fourth and kind of industrial revolution. And if that's the case, then our students should be preparing for that fourth industrial revolution. And what that means is we have to somehow figure out how we help them learn through technology. How do we help them take, especially in the IB1 exciting, how do we help them take an active way versus being institutionalized in the school? How do we allow them to participate in some neat things? That technology will happen, allow to happen. So that's one of the things that I took away from that. It's not just, what that would have meant for our snow days, but also I do think we're missing something by not having a technology available to all of our students. Of course, some students can do it, but what that would mean for our curriculum and for teachers to be able to do in the classroom, outside of the classroom. They really talked about a learning that happens, this is why I wish I remember the name of it, but a learning that can happen throughout all time, right? It's not something that has to happen in a classroom between this time and this time. Learning's more experiential than that. So I don't know when, but that's one of the things that it just keeps in my mind, is how do we keep technology in the hands of our students.
Well stated. Anything else?
No.
All right, great. So similar to the crew advisory board, again, a great investment to get the community together and to have our administrators there too. And I want to say thank you out loud for everybody that was there and present to really engage with our community in that way. And I think that there was a lot of constructive feedback that came out of that I know as a board we've talked about at our work session, and really look forward to leveraging that information. So that's good. Work session was also very robust. And then, Kevin, I would echo what you said about AMSD. I think the other thing that was really insightful is so the 3 districts that presented, they all had different access to computers too, and the different ways that they worked around that in order to have those alternative learning days called something cooler than that.
So those districts were Robbinsdale, Shakopee, and Farmington.
Yeah.
And one of them was in 2 different districts, right? One gentleman was in 2 different districts.
Yeah, he was a new superintendent at Shakopee.
Yeah, and I think what I took home from the Robbinsdale superintendent is they had in their regular school calendar, they structured these digital learning days, or whatever they're called. I'll have to look at my notes, and so that then when the snowstorm happened, it's like they've done it before. And what they did for those planned digital learning days is they did it on the same day as like staff development days, so then staff could also get comfortable facilitating alternative learning arrangement that way, and do their curriculum like staff development too. So it was kind of like a way to have best of both worlds. So the kids were still learning on these kind of practice days, and the staff was developing. And so that was just neat for them to talk that through. So it wasn't like, oh my gosh, we're in the middle of a snowstorm in the polar vortex, what should we do? It was like, hey, we've done this once before. Let's put this into play now. But again, they didn't have one-to-one, I think, in the Robbinsdale district, if I remember right. One of them didn't. So they talked about trying to, like, how they got around that a little bit. Obviously, it's way easier when kids have access to computers in the way that we would like them to have access to, in an equitable way across all. So just definitely food for thought in how to do that. The other thing that I appreciated that they said is that it fostered a different way for the students to interact with one another when they were doing these online, kind of chats and conversations and participatory learning that way. So again, just different ways to engage kids in learning. So
Couldn't find it.
you couldn't? Oh, well, we'll share it next time. And then I attended the spring activities kickoff, which was packed house, just an absolute, I think it's track. And so, yeah, just busy spring. So
Awesome.
great.
Brief update on my end. Attended the work session. Great discussion. The community advisory group. I think that just for me really highlighted the need for a more structured form of alternative communications, or a more structured plan to getting alternative communications out there. Like I've always said, we've got the information and we distribute it, but it's just not finding people where they're at. And I think the message from the community reinforced that, and so I thought it was super helpful. And the last item I had is it looks like we'll be having the community ed meeting, the committee meeting next week. So we'll be getting together and we'll have more to report back on that. It sounds like we've got some exciting things to talk about based on Melissa's update today. So good stuff.
So I have an upcoming meeting with a company on communication, so that's the second one to compare. But I think it was Amy or Kevin,
It's
you
me.
had somebody
I'm
that you were
gonna
gonna
get you,
get me a name.
Christy Peel from Media Minefield.
Okay. You wanna send that to me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks. We have MSBA Day at the Capitol on the 25th of March. That is spring break. So I'm not sure if any of you are at all interested. I'm gonna be there just as to represent the district.
I'll be thinking of you while I'm in New York City.
That is a Monday, I believe.
I am still out of town.
It's next Monday.
The next Monday. Tomorrow, I am meeting with the Commissioner of Education to have a discussion about creative revenue sources for school districts, especially dealing with the special ed cross subsidy. So she has got a responsibility to take these ideas and bring them to the governor. So maybe we could get an audience to talk about some creative ways to support schools. If you've been watching the process of the budget going through the legislators, there's both referendum and debt service equalization that are still out there. And just so you understand that if both of those passed, it would not impact our budget. It would impact our ability to pass levies.
Right.
Or bonds. And it would mean that our local taxpayers' taxes would go down significantly. So those are things that are still sitting out there, and they're numbers that the Democrats have, and they're numbers that the Republicans have. And if you look at those, you're saying, how in the world will they ever get together to figure this out? So they're gonna have to figure that out over the next several weeks. Because the governor has talked about equalization as being a high priority. No, I'm not sure if that's gonna happen or not, but we're optimistic that there's gonna be some improvement.
Has there been anything else with the school days? Because there was big, talk about it, and the Senate had one plan, the House has another plan. Have they moved forward with anything since then?
The Senate passed, I believe, the House passed a different one. They have to go to conference committee, come out with something, and then whatever they come out with, they have to go back to the Senate and to the House and pass the same bill. Then they would take it to the governor. All the superintendents are saying, if you don't get this figured out pretty soon, it's not gonna matter because you're gonna bypass all the days that you would have to make up, so. Northwest Suburban, St. Francis was looking to come into the Northwest Suburban. I think they ran into some stumbling blocks a little bit. They wanted to move in and to be able to get some of the resources into their district, and I sure understand that. Superintendents from the Northwest Suburban Board was supportive of that, except some of the rules and regs that are there that are coming down from the Department of Ed. We had to make sure that the internal policies matched what was coming out of the Department of Ed through Northwest Suburban, and that was something I think that the Northwest Suburban Board was working on. Amy's our representative on that. The piece that was, I think, a bit of a stumbling block is, do they have to have their students participate in the lottery, meaning can they open up to go to other school districts? And they were concerned about sending their students out of their school district because they would lose the state aid on those school students. That's number one. And number two, I think they weren't exactly sure how the transportation was all going to work out. I think they're trying to move a little faster than they had the answers. So I think they're going to slow it down. I think they'll eventually come in and join us, but it's not as fast as a process. It's easier to leave than it is to come in, I think. I don't know if you've had that discussion yet.
Well, we meet again, so thanks for that update, because we meet on Wednesday, so I was just quick looking at the agenda to see if we have St. Francis on the agenda, and I don't, unless it'll just be in the basic updates from Melissa, so.
So that's out there. Masico, they really liked you being the vice chair. I don't know. It was impressive that you made the meeting and then you still made their meeting. Good job.
Thank you.
The expo was not as well as much attendance as there was in the past years. So we're going to brainstorm whether we want to go to an every other year. We're going to ask the vendors, what do you think? Or if we could try to change it up and do something creative like Taste of the Town and invite restaurants from a 25-mile area and see if they'd be interested in coming in, doing something, selling tickets. And so we're just going to brainstorm some new ideas. And I think, Brady, that probably will come up at your community ed meeting to see what's out there. We also had negotiations training. That was Eric and Cher and I went to that over in Brooklyn Park. And we've got an intent to negotiate from the principals. We've got an intent to negotiate from our various bargaining groups. So that season is going to start up. So if you haven't...
That's what I went to last. Was it last year or year before? I think it was
probably last year.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
I wish
Your
I would have known
definition of fun and mine are different.
About it, I didn't catch it. Because I'm on that, I would have liked to have went.
That's a fun one.
So we'll have to form those teams and start getting a schedule together, and it can either be quick or it can be a long drawn-out process, and I hope that we're on the quick side.
What are our next contract negotiations?
They just notified us that they're interested in, so.
Principals and teachers, or not
They
teachers?
all
three.
They all are gonna start to come up. Once they send us the letter, then we've gotta start the process.
Gotcha.
So that's my update.
Great.
Just need to assign recognition.
Yeah. Do the Reams one. Unless someone else really wanted to do that one.
That FFA group did a fantastic job.
Great.
They really did.
I'm most proud because, we didn't have a machine shop before, we didn't have a DECA program, we didn't have a business offerings, we didn't have agriculture. There was no STEM school. There's a lot of things that our staff has really stepped up and just taken ownership for and done some great jobs, and the kids are loving it, and it's exciting, whether it be robotics or some of our music programs. I mean, we've always had really strong music programs, but I'm just really super proud of the efforts that kids put forward. One side you're talking about traveling to Galapagos Islands, the other ones you're talking about travel to New York with the kids
Yeah.
and band, and
Pretty cool.
then you got kids going to Tennessee with the national
Yeah.
FFA, so it's some really good stuff for kids.
And I just really appreciate having students come in and share. I mean, that's a pretty cool thing that they were able to do that. So as much as we can get that is.
Next time, I think it'll be the high school staff, or the high school students and staff that are gonna have a chance to come up
So
and
good.
share.
Right.
Cool.
All right, Battle of the Books, 2. All right, high school auditorium text, 2. And then we have career points, 1.
I'll take that one. I went to every home game, so watched him.
There you go.
Thank you. Great. Right, that closes our formal agenda for the board meeting. So with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Hi.
This meeting is adjourned.